Hello, everybody. It's just me now. You got two folks watching. Hey, say something in the chat here. I'm just waiting. Hey, Hornet's Nest. I'm waiting on these other individuals to attend. It is looking like there's going to be a little bit of tardiness when it's just me. So I just wanted to start this on time, like I told you guys I would. And those guys, I assume, are going to be here real soon. So I've got the chat pulled up here, and maybe you saw me tweet earlier, maybe not, but we'll be tweeting out really soon. Not just tweeting out, but also giving you guys here. I won't be tweeting it at all. I'm just going to be giving you guys a link that only folks that participate in the live recording are going to have access to. Of course, you're free to tell all the people that you know and like. Don't tell the people you know and don't like. I hope I'm not one of those, but in this case, I guess it wouldn't affect me. I'm going to be giving you a code for the wonderful Spirit Island. To give you a little bit of an inside scoop here, I actually bought Spirit Island with my own money from the wonderful game surplus. So there's that. They were one of the retailers that had it in stock for a great price. Immediately loved it. Told Carmen, hey, I want this on the podcast picks. It was actually when Carmen kind of had the idea to do a podcast picks where the podcast could say what games they think are best and what games they specifically want to have kind of their name put to. And anyway, Spirit Island just seemed to me like a really great fit. And so now you can actually get two separate codes for coupons from the Good, the Weird, and the Ugly. I'm sorry to make this like an infomercial for everybody who's participating. Might just be you, Hornet's Nest. I saw we were up to 2, and it looks like we're back down to 1. They're probably like, what's he doing? Well, you can already go into Game Surplus, and anything that's on the podcast picks, which you can find on their main site, it's pretty conspicuous. You just type in the code GBU, capital GBU, when checking out, and that will get you anything on the podcast picks 10% off. They're already discounted prices, and at this point, I checked some of the other retailers that I used to use online, and Game Surplus is currently still offering the $90 shipping threshold, which is about the best you can find in the industry. So not only that, but they support some really great stuff. So please, anybody who's watching this, please go ahead and check out Game Surplus, and I will be giving the code once I got some of my fellow cohorts here. I will be giving the code to Spirit Island. And something pretty cool, I guess, it's just so happened to come in today. I saw on the well, actually, a guy in our game group, a local guy in our game group here, David, who kind of got me addicted to Spirit Island in the first place. He said on Black Friday or around that time, the Greater Than Games that puts out Spirit Island and also does, I think, Sentinels of the Multiverse, they were offering the 2 promo boards on Black Friday for purchase from their website. So these are the ones that were only available through the Kickstarter, through the conventions. They are not found in any of the other stuff. And so I just got these, and literally I just cracked open the shrink wrap for the first time. So you are seeing the very first ever me reading this, and I'm not going to actually read it, but I do think that it's cool. Heart of the Wildfire here is one of the things, one of the spirits that you play as, and I've just noticed here that you're actually going to be manipulating the blight cards. So not just the blight, you will put 3 of your things and 2 blight on your starting board. So the extra blight comes out because of the wildfire, which that is a very interesting thing that nothing else has pushed in that direction yet. And the other one is Serpent Slumbering Beneath the Isle. Man, these just give me the feels. They just it's like the tingly thing around the whatever those people, the weird people that say that they get the tingly feeling. It just, I don't know. For me, they almost make me feel like I should be hearing like the soundtrack to the sound of the Last of the Mohicans every time that, like, Heart of the Wildfire. Yeah, if I owned soundtracks or was a more professional person, I could just click the button. But right now, I figured since I'm the only person talking, I may as well be fairly candid. Oh, today I once again ran my game group at the school after school, and I had a kid bite another kid, biting like Choppa, shoot him up real good. And anyhow, these are 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds biting. Yeah. Today was not the most beautiful day that the game group has ever seen, but I did have a pretty good takeaway, and that was that I had more kids wanting to play board games than I did kids wanting to play video games, which is really cool. I had Pandemic Iberia was the one that the kids specifically requested. And I think it's kind of cool that one, they made it go up to 5 players. So maybe I'll actually give a review of Pandemic Iberia at some point. But I mean, it's so close to the original Pandemic. It does have some nice little changes. Yeah, no kidding, right? Ow is the way one of the kids. No, this drew blood. This was something where I definitely had to I had to stop playing a game. I had to stop being a gamer and start being a babysitter is what it felt like. I was not a gamer anymore. I was a babysitter. So yeah, I had to get that situation diffused and had to get kids taken care of. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. Never seen this before. The serpent slumbering, its tracks sort of converge onto one spot. I have no idea what that means, but it seems really cool. Really cool. So automatically 10 out of 10. the Joe Silence seal of approval. Ironic seal of approval. So maybe you guys have the right link. I'm starting to wonder, do these other gentlemen have the right link or not? I might get Andy on the phone here. Maybe Andy is. What's going on with Andy, I wonder? We are an hour earlier. Trent said he was going to be late. Unfortunately, no TC today. The earlier time is tough for him to work on the West Coast. And, man, it's weird. We were going to record this Saturday. We were going to record with Efka, who had something come up to record the long view of Kemet. And so I won't hear from TC today. I won't hear from TC on Saturday. Man, I'm starting to miss TC. He did record an awesome intro that will be introduced probably on this episode, together with anything that I keep from my monologue here, and that will be really cool. I'm actually kind of sick right now. I know it doesn't seem like it, but well, maybe it doesn't seem like it. I don't know. I got I got the crud. I got the crud, and it's not just a respiratory thing. It's also got a little bit of a digestive element to it, and it is just I don't know. It's killing me. It is just killing me. My father-in-law's name is Andy. I almost sent that text to him. That wouldn't have been pretty. Well, I don't think it would have mattered. That's sent. I can only do one thing at a time. Hornet's Nest, do you have a first name that I could ever refer to you as, or you just prefer to be Hornet's Nest? Because I can say Hornet. I mean, honestly, I feel like, I think my dad would actually use his real name because I don't think he knows stuff enough. But my dad was he wasn't the Hornet's Nest. He was the Fighting Bees in his school. So it made me start to wonder, is this actually my dad? Probably not. You're not my father, right? Are you? That my kids, I teach Spanish, if that's new to anyone. And sometimes I have kids that are at different paces than other kids. I just have some time for them to kill. And I'm like, okay, why don't you get on Duolingo and work through those things? And Duolingo has some of the most interesting lines for you to translate that feel like they're just a straight grammar practice. Oh, hi, Carter. That's not my dad's name, so we're good. There was, back to the Duolingo thing, I had a kid. I was just kind of looking over their shoulders there on Duolingo, and the line was, something like, oh, I forget exactly what the name. Bernardo, no S2 Padre. Like, Bernardo is not your dad. And I just thought, like, man, when is that statement going to come up? And I got to thinking, like, if that actually comes up, you know, the only thing that would be the appropriate following of that is like, Bernardo, no S2 Padre. No! I suppose that's just the Luke, yo soy tu padre thing, but, you know, Bernardo is not your dad. No! Probably been in like at least a half dozen telenovelas by this point, though. So I'm behind the 8 ball, I'm sure. So, Carter, at this point, it looks like it's me and you and a lurker. And anyhow, what have you been playing recently? I know that if I recall right, from the last times we discussed things, you played some of the Unlock or Exit games. I forget exactly which one. I think it was Unlock, right? That kind of got you started in the hobby, which is really interesting. I think I got some of my kids in the game group that are really wanting to get deeper in. They got started on like Unlock as well. You know, you'll tell me if I remember that correctly or not. But anywho, I feel like I should just, you know, like share the link to this Google Hangout. Just, you know, be like, hey, hey, Luke. Yes, it's my mom. Hi, Mom. Luke's here again. How have you been, Luke? So, so Carter, have you been playing anything else recently? I mean, I suppose the first question is, have you played the rest of the Unlocks? Have you played any of the Exit games? Have you tried the old werewolf one, the escape room in a box, the werewolf experiment? Pandemic. Oh, cool. Yeah. You spelled it right. So there's Pandemic. You know, you got all sorts of different flavors of Pandemic. I got that out recently though with my game group at school, and I just got base Pandemic, and I had forgotten just how like easy it is. Oh my goodness. Did I share the wrong link? Are you kidding me? What is this? We're all in a hangout without you? This is absolutely hilarious. This is why I'm alone. This is why I have no friends. All right, guys. Let's see here. Is Jeff there? Jeff must be there too, and I must have just shared the wrong link with everybody. So let me... I'm not feeling the best, guys. I apologize. This will be a lot of fun. I'm the one who has to edit it, so I'm not apologizing to anybody, just myself. Got one coming into Jeff. This is kind of hilarious. Hopefully, I'm sharing the right link with you guys right now. Oh my gosh, there's got to be some really great. Please, guys, share the best emoji for what I have done. This is episode 143B. It is. It's you have the wrong apartment.
Hello.
I'm sorry, it's 668. You have the neighbor of the beast. Trent, I heard you, man. I figured there was something wrong. I was talking to myself. Yeah, I was talking to myself. Has Jeff been there?
Yeah, he was hanging out with us.
Oh my goodness. Was it just a dead hangout? What was that even a link to?
It was us three. We were all at it.
We were all in a hangout, just chilling.
I clicked on like the same link though. I clicked on that too. I mean, I had to like get into it actually through YouTube, but I do not know what happened there, gentlemen.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The best emoji. Nice, Carter. Carter just shared an emoji there for what I just did. Yes, that is a great one.
Is it a brain fart emoji?
Yeah, it's precisely how
I pooped the bed.
Yeah, there I am. I'm sitting in it. I shipped my pants.
Oh my, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, I've been talking to these wonderful individuals here, to Carter and Luke, who've kept me. They're my grief counselors right now, and I apologize to you guys. And anyway, this is the good, the bored, and the ugly. This is how official we are here. This is pretty awesome sauce.
This is
boy.
Good stuff.
Well, at least you guys were all there and all had the right, all had the same length, and I appreciate that you guys found it out. I do not know how there was 2 links. I do not know where that second link is even headed to.
Yep.
I'm just gonna start going here, guys.
This is like what happened
we go.
when my English teacher in my area tries to use technology.
Yeah.
What is she, like, close to retirement age?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I told the kids to go ask her to be a guest speaker and tell us what things were like in the geologic past.
Well, I am a millennial, Andy, so I'm nearing retirement myself.
Yeah. It works out. She makes fun of my grammar. I make fun of her age. It's fair.
Nice.
Yeah, Andy, your grammar is pretty. It's worth quite a bit of ridicule. It is.
Oh yeah.
My
students are like, "How do you spell this, Mr. Dennison?" I'm like, "Why are you asking me about spelling?"
Nice.
You've had me for a year now. You know this is not something you ask me.
Nice. Is that? Yes. Is Geof? Are you practicing piano there?
And my daughter is practicing piano, of course, so that she can practice piano while, of course, I am, trying to record. So this is the best time to practice piano, don't you know?
This is the time for practicing piano.
This is the best time of all. Joe, how do I got to go? Tell me one more time. I got to go to YouTube, and I gotta watch it there to see the chat. Is that the deal here?
Oh, and let me just share it with you here, okay? Because I have it. I was actually just waiting to share the YouTube, the live chat, until you guys finally showed up.
Yeah.
There it is. Just click on that. That'll give you the dropout chat. We got Carter. We got Luke and Carter, and we got some other folks that appear to be watching. So
nice.
Luke, if you guys didn't know, it's actually my mother, because I suggested that the person watching the video without saying anything was my mother once, and it happened to be Luke, and he spoke up and was like, "Hi, Joe, it's your mom."
Okay. Thought you were talking to your mom. So there we go. All right. Excellent. Well, guys, it's nice to get a chance to hang out and chat with you. And thanks for having me on this evening. And Joe, whenever you're ready to take it away, we can get going.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, you might want to check the chat there. Luke had a pretty good game there that I think you have quite some interest in. You too, Trent. So we're going to get this one kicked off in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. Also crossover with the Longview podcast, which is looking at well, I guess in this case, conventions, and usually taking a deep look at board games that have stood test of time, that have been around for a while, and we go very in-depth into those in the Longview. But today's special crossover episode is due to a guest here to tell us all about the first PAX Unplugged convention of all time. He is the original host of the Longview that passed the torch over in July, and his name is Geof Gambill. Geof, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I want to say hello to you, Joe, and Trent, and Andrew, and it's nice to be here with everybody tonight, and thanks for that lovely intro.
Absolutely, sir. Yes, that's right. He alluded to the two cohorts or co-hosts, or I would say, I don't know. I would say something really. You're
better quarters, maybe. No.
Probably.
Yeah, something like that. All right.
Yep, Andy Dennison's here, and Andy, I think for you, you weren't here last week, so this is you're making a triumphant return, correct?
Yeah. No, I was getting sick last week, so I don't know. I could have got on, but I basically would have sneezed at the screen, and that would have terrified everyone. So
yeah,
then probably just passed out of my keyboard and started snoring.
Yeah, I feel about there, man. I shared the wrong link with everybody already, and yeah, for some reason I got something is in my head. There's something going on, so I feel it, Andy. I'm gonna try to let you guys do the lion's share of the talking here. Because I'm kind of hoping to stave off something myself. So glad that you're back with us here after a month away from the microphone. So the world has no idea what's coming to it now.
That's right. That's right.
And I'm also being joined by the ghost of Christmas past.
Hi there, it's Trent Ham.
It's coming up on holiday season. Trent has an awesome game he's going to be hyping. I don't know if you checked it out, Trent, but down in the comments on the YouTube page, you are going to be hyping a pretty awesome game that I cannot wait to introduce. So I will just leave you to look for yourself.
Oh, do we finally hear Trent's thoughts on Tonto Korra or whatever?
Nice. I don't think anybody needs to hear any thoughts on that game.
No, I don't think there has been a
about
coherent thought on that aside from like this is my waifu game. So one of the first things I'd like to announce here, The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, and the Long View are both sponsored by Game Surplus, and I teased this earlier today, and I have now the actual information for those of you that are wanting to get an amazing game at an amazing price. I have it right here in my hand. I bought it with my own money, and I did buy it from Game Surplus. But this game called Spirit Island is just absolutely phenomenal, and it is a wonderful game that I believe belongs in everybody who considers themselves a mid to heavy gamer. You should check this one out. It has an excellent sort of almost like a lineage to Pandemic, but it takes it totally off and into an island where you're controlling spirits and trying to eliminate invaders. It is an excellent, excellent game that I would heartily recommend to you. It has already been on the podcast picks on the Game Surplus website. On the podcast picks, any of those games, you can actually add them to your cart when checking out. Use the coupon capital G, capital B, capital U. That's capital G as in good, capital B as in bored, capital U as in underwear. And you will be able to get 10% off of every game on there, which I heartily do not endorse because only some of them are mine, and neither should you. Neither should you need a hearty endorsement from everybody, because you know what? When you got so many diverse tastes out there in the world, when we have Andy, we have me, we have Jeff, we have Trent, we have TC that's also on, and I think that there's just so many different things that are best for different folks, and you'll hear about all of them here on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. And when you check that podcast picks for The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, you'll see that there are games on there that you play at your own risk if you're talking to me, but Andy's going to call them.
You're really selling it hard, aren't you?
Dude, Andy's going to call them the best games ever.
This game is garbage, but those games are garbage. But this one's really great. And, hey,
it is the place for different strokes for different folks. Now, if you like my strokes, I don't know why I said that.
This is going in a
I
really
didn't I said that. Okay, guys, I got
so segue.
All right, so anyway,
Segue.
The thing is, guys, I do have a special announcement about Spirit Island specifically. It's finally back in stock from Game Surplus. Let me pull up the actual email from Carmen here, the owner and businessman behind Game Surplus, an amazing guy that's been on our podcast before. Unfortunately, could not make it tonight. Hopefully, he'll join us a little bit in the chat. Let me get the exact code, because you're not only going to be able to save your 10% from the podcast with the GBU code, you're also going to be able to save an extra $10. That is more than 10%. Nice. That is $10. And it's active now through Friday. And that is specifically because we wanted to give this to everybody who listens to the podcast, who comes and participates in the chat. So that is $10 off of Spirit Island. Maybe used with existing codes. So it stacks. And you can only use it once per user. And the first 10 people are the only people going to get this deal. So that means hopefully people who are listening now are going to get a chance to get this amazing code on this amazing game. And you may actually, your code, let's see here. It is just all lowercase, Spirit Island GBU. Once again, that's Spirit Island GBU. You may use the code HOLD2017 if you want to hold an order until you get to free shipping, meaning if you have, if you just have this game and you want to get that price, but you don't want to buy everything right now, if you don't see other things you want to buy, you can use the code HOLD2017, 2017, HOLD 2017, and then you can hold that until you get your free shipping threshold. So, honestly, guys,
if I could just jump in here, Joe, real quick, just to give a shout out to Carmen. I'm very like that whole thing just blows my mind. I haven't heard of anybody doing that before. This idea of, you know, hey, we're going to offer you a really special deal on this game, but we also know that this is the time of year when lots of new games are being released. Charterstone's about to hit the street. Agra, I think Agra just came in. Game Surplus has that as well. A lot of people are waiting on Rajas of the Ganges. And so what Carmen's doing there is he's kind of letting you get this great deal, but he'll hold it for you until maybe some other titles that you're waiting for come in, and then you can still get free shipping. So, I mean, to me, that's just like, you know, putting a cherry on top of the cherry. So kudos to Carmen for doing that. That's very creative of him. And I also think it's a great service to the gaming community, because a lot of times you get these great deals, maybe on some discount codes or in for shipping. It's like, I usually wait. So that's a really creative idea. So kudos to him for thinking of that, because I think that's going to be a help to a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I just would like to reemphasize here, Carmen asked me what games I wanted to promote. So you got to, this, like, it's not that he has this huge backlog of Spirit Island, copies of Spirit Island, and I'm just hawking them off. No, I bought this game for the full price that Carmen asks. So you're going to get a better deal on this game than I did personally for the copy that you see in my hands right here. And I do not care, because I want you guys to get rewarded for joining us right here at the time and hearing it from the mouth of the dragon. And I also just think that this is a game you can't go wrong with, in my opinion. I really enjoy the fact that Carmen is using our recommendations to actually drive his sales. That means a lot to me. And it is a recommendation that I would have given to anybody, regardless of whether or not you're going to sell anything, and regardless of whether or not Game Surplus was a sponsor. But the fact that he's doing it this way, this is how he's doing things his own way, and carving out what Game Surplus is going to, you know, what Game Surplus is going to offer to a community. So thank you very much to you listeners, and that's the way that we're saying it. We review games on this podcast. And we also are going to be talking tonight about the first ever PAX Unplugged, which, Geof, you went for the whole convention, right, as kind of from a press perspective, representing the long view, and the good, the bored, and the ugly here is here to benefit as well. So this was at the same time as Trent at BGG Con. So anyway, we just heard from Trent last week in his episode about BGG Con, and he talks about all different types of brand new games that were coming out. And what was going on in PAX Unplugged was definitely something that was very noteworthy, and something I think, Geof, that, you know, we've talked about this before, and something that I think that the gaming community really is curious about. You know, like, what's this brand new convention? What is it going to turn into? What things did you observe there? You know, just what happened? Because when I keep saying PAXU, I didn't know what it even was really referring to. Every time I've seen PAX in the past, it's like usually some other type of a convention. Like, it's a big video game convention, isn't it? PAX?
That's my understanding, yeah, but I have no experience with it. Maybe, you know, Trent or Andy knows something about it, but this was my first PAX event, so I have no knowledge of anything that happened before that. Either of you guys have any experience with PAX?
Nope. The only other convention I ever went to was VidCon with my daughter, and that was disturbing.
And you went to Gen Con last year.
Oh, yeah. I blocked that out for some reason.
Oh, my goodness. What about you, Trent? Have you been to any kind of PAX things before?
I have not, but I have a couple good friends that went to them, and their impression of it was all video games. So,
Right. Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, they didn't even seem to know that there was anything tabletop at all related to it.
Right, right.
And I think that is because the U stands for the Unplugged, which is this is the board game version of a popular video game convention.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
So, you know, as a sort of a general overview, and then, you know, you guys can ask whatever questions you like. So I heard from Joel Eddy, who does the wonderful Drive-Thru Review, and he has his own podcast and video review channel. Joel kind of, I guess about a year or so ago, sent me a text message saying, hey, you know, I'm going to Philly, you in? And I was like, what? And so I kind of back and forth with him, and he's like, yeah, there's a new convention that's going to be going on in Philadelphia, PAX Unplugged. And I was like, I know nothing about this. So he kind of filled me in, and I went to the website, which was like really primitive at that point. There was almost no information. It was just kind of, you know, a banner and, you know, the purple kind of, you know, page for PAX Unplugged, and very little information. Everything was kind of like coming soon, and you know, more information to follow kind of thing. But I thought, hey, it's in Philadelphia, and I'm up here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and I kind of, for the most part, grew up outside of Philadelphia, right outside the Northeast, and so, you know, I love Philadelphia. So I was like, this is awesome. So there's going to be a convention in my, you know, home city, and this, yeah, I definitely I'm going. So, you know, ended up sending a message to PAX for, you know, asking for media credentials, and one of the first things I noticed is, you know, they seem to be very well organized. Like their email responses came very quickly. The procedures for what to do for that came very quickly, and you know, when I kind of mentioned that to Joel, he's like, well, yeah, duh. They've been doing this for a long time. This is just their first, you know, board gaming convention. That's really what's new here. But PAX as an organization has been around for quite some time. I'm like, oh, well, that explains that. So I kind of waited with a lot of anticipation, you know, for the event to come. It was a busy convention season for me. I got to take the trip to Essen. I went to WBC and Origins this year for the first time, and you know, had a wonderful time there. And so I was really kind of pumped for it, but I had absolutely no idea what to expect. So in my mind, I was thinking to myself, okay, first time board game convention in Philadelphia. So it's a big city. I'm thinking maybe in their first year, we'll see like WBC numbers, you know, I'll see like 5,000, you know, 7,000 people over the course of a few days. It'll be kind of laid back and relaxed, and probably, you know, not a lot going on. And it'll be fun just to kind of see it being born, you know, this kind of idea of like, this is the first time. So I ended up arriving there on, I guess it was like Thursday. Was it late Thursday? I think I came in, and no, it was like Thursday afternoon, I think. And the hotel was right next to the convention center. So PAX Unplugged is, at least for the next few years, as far as I understand, going to be held at the convention center in Philadelphia, which is right down in Center City, near the Chinatown district. And the infrastructure in Philadelphia is, of course, like fine. They're perfectly capable of handling any kind of convention, let alone, you know, I'm thinking this, you know, little first-time convention. So my expectations, the reason I'm spending so much time on this is because when I first got there on Friday, I was kind of a little bit freaked out because it was busier than I thought it was going to be. And I was kind of looking around and thinking, okay, this is larger than I thought it was going to be. And they had a huge convention hall, and about it was kind of reserved for vendors and publishers. And then I would say definitely the lion's share of the convention center was just tons and tons of tables. Just tables, and people were playing. People were running events at tables, like I know Stronghold was running, because I helped them out a little bit, a giant version of Flamme Rouge, you know. People were playing the Giant King of Tokyo, and there was just people kind of milling about everywhere. And right in the center of the hall is this huge kind of first look area, they called it. And the first look area is all of the games that basically came back, courtesy of Game Surplus, to PAXU for people to check out. So there's just table after table after table with all of these new games from Essen, and they had these volunteers there who they called enforcers, very recognizable, had like a uniform, and they were there to not only keep order, but they were there to teach games. Like, they were the people who knew the games, and they would teach the game and, you know, walk the table through it, make sure everybody was okay. And then continue with their kind of patrol duties or whatever. And it was just very, very well run. And so all of the kind of cool new Essen titles were there that people were looking for. And, you know, Carmen and I had kind of worked with the PAXU organization. You know, they had kind of worked with Carmen and contacted him and said, hey, you know, could you, you know, run and kind of grab these games and ship them real quick back so that we'll have them for the convention. And so Carmen and I spent a decent amount of time running about, kind of muling games, picking them up, and then Carmen would go and to the UPS spot there in Essen and just pack up boxes, you know, and he was like a master. We talked about that in the Essen show of like the Tetris of packing boxes of games. And just box after box. I think PAX ended up having like 6 or 7 very big, like when I say big, I'm saying like 3 feet by 3 feet, like just big boxes packed full of games that were sent back to the States for this convention. So, you know, kudos to PAX for, you know, jumping on that and saying, hey, you know, we're willing to dive into this. And of course, kudos to Game Surplus and Carmen for organizing that, getting all the shipping done. And then, you know, Carmen kind of, you know, Game Surplus was kind of featured at all the tables, you know, just kind of let people know that they had sponsored this kind of first look area. So that was pretty cool to be a part of, you know, to see people playing games. It's like, hey, I remember that game. I went and picked that up, you know, so that was kind of cool. But nothing really prepared me really for like Friday night and then Saturday. It was crazy. It was crazy. There were so many people and so many people just playing. Like it reminded me much more of Origins than it did anything else, because Origins really had that focus of people playing games. And this was very much the same thing. There was more table space for people to play games and more people playing games than there was space for people selling games. So I looked at that as like a really cool thing. And so I don't know what the official numbers are. I don't know that they've released them, but my best estimate, like a really pessimistic conservative number on my part, I would have to say like 15 to 17,000, and my expectation is it was probably somewhere in the 20s. Truth be told, I wouldn't be surprised if it was as high as 25. So, I mean, that just blew me away because I was thinking a first-time convention, I'm not expecting much, and it was very, very well run and very busy. So I was really surprised by that. So that was really cool. A lot of vendors were there. A lot of publishers were there. It was difficult for them this year, I know, because they kind of had to split their teams because PAXU, for you know, whatever reason, I think it was probably just an oversight. They scheduled this at the same time that, you know, they scheduled BGG Con. So a lot of people had to make a choice, you know, hey, is it, you know, am I going to go to PAX or am I going to go to BGG Con? So I think that was, you know, a little rough for people to kind of have to make that choice because, of course, everyone wants to check out the new thing. But at the same time, BGG Con has really earned a place in a lot of people's hearts, and it's a place where people go to really just kind of hang out with members of their own tribe, if you want to think of it that way. So PAX was a very different feel. A lot of people that were there that I kind of chatted with had never been to a gaming convention before. A lot of people you could see wandering around and coming up to do demos and stuff, they had the big eyes. You know, you could just kind of see them looking around like, what the heck is all of this? And how have I not heard about any of this? And where did all this come from? And, you know, I think there were a lot of people who were kind of just wide-eyed and wandering. That's kind of the way I would put it. And so I know from talking to some publishers that sales were kind of slow until like Sunday, you know, where it was kind of like, I guess everybody sort of made up their mind what it was they wanted. You know, after kind of demoing and kind of checking out everything that was there to offer, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was really, really cool. It was just a blast to get to kind of be there and experience that, you know, for the first time. So to me, the highlights were the location. You know, I can talk to you guys later about, you know, the food if you want to know. Everybody likes to talk about food from conventions, but I really think Philly kind of knocked it out of the park with the food because you think about like Origins and what do they call it, the North Market. Really cool. Loved the North Market. I mean, got some great food there. I'm not knocking the North Market, but the convention center is literally like right across the tunnel is the Reading Terminal Market, which is kind of a Philadelphia institution. And I'd say the Reading Terminal Market is probably at least 3 times the size of that. And the choices of food to buy, and it's all pretty darn reasonable, you know, $10, $12 for a lunch, which in a city isn't bad.
No.
And, you know, you got all the classic kind of Philadelphia stuff that people hear about, like cheesesteaks and stuff like that, and hoagies and sandwiches and stuff. But then, you know, you also have all the exotic food there. You got Indian food. Vegetarians were very well represented. There was stuff there for them. Donuts and pastries, and oh my goodness. So that was really kind of cool because it made it very easy to kind of just go across the street and grab something and then just walk right back into the convention center. So that was kind of nifty. And then again, the infrastructure of, you know, I heard who was talking about it. It might have been the Dice Towers coverage, or it might have been on Board Games coverage of PAXU, where they were kind of talking about Isaac Shalev. If you have a chance to listen to their coverage from on Board Games, they did a great job and really brought up a lot of really interesting points about PAXU. So I'd encourage people to go check that out. But one of the things he was talking, I think it was probably him, if it wasn't the Dice Tower guys, and he was talking about how it's like, okay, at the end of the day, you want to go and grab some dinner, you walk out of the convention center down half a block, and it's like, here's a restaurant, let's go in. What's the wait? 2 hours. Dang it.
Yeah.
Walk like another half a block, walk into a restaurant. You know, how long's the wait? About an hour. Dang it. You know, walk like another block or two. How long's the wait? Maybe 30 minutes. You know, walk another block. How long's the wait? Oh, you can be seated right now. So, you know, if you were willing to walk a few blocks, you know, you really didn't have a problem, and there was tons of choices, of course, to eat because you're in a major city. So that was cool.
The whole like food thing at conventions, I've never understood. Every time I go to a convention, I take like a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter.
A jug of wine.
And a jar of peanut butter and like a bag full of fruit, and then like I put a few things in my backpack at the start of the day, and then I never go to restaurants. And then I hear people talking endlessly about restaurants. I'm like, dude, you're missing out on the convention.
Yes, the gaming is a nice thing.
Yeah, the gaming. I hear you, Trent, and I get that. And you certainly save money that way.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, okay, so when I went to BGG Con, I had to go to Hard 8. Like, you know, the food is like part of like, and for me, clearly, if you've seen me, food is like something I really enjoy. So, you know, to me, it's like, okay, if I'm gonna go to Columbus, I want to see what the food scene's like. You know, what are foods that I can get there that maybe I can't get at home? What are they known for? What are they famous? So to me, that's kind of part of the allure of it. And so I think that's why maybe some people like me are kind of like, ooh, you know, let's see what kind of food's available. But you're right. You're taking precious time away from gaming. So I guess I can't blame you there if you just want to pack a jar of peanut butter. But when you said a loaf of bread, I thought you were going to say a jug of wine and thou. But apparently not, Trent. My hopes have been dashed again by you. I thought we were going to have a loaf of bread and a jug of wine. Fine. Be that way, Trent.
Nope, not the two of you guys.
Nope. Not happening. I don't know.
Jeff will be making, you know, he'll be going around and telling everybody like rating all the different places in Philadelphia, and Trent's gonna be sitting there at the game like just shoveling in his peanut butter. So
yep. It's fuel. It's fuel, right? So yeah.
I do think to a certain extent, what I would put in here about just board game conventions in general is that it does seem kind of like the biggest board game conventions at this point are to the point that they do not they're not a pleasant experience. It's not very like you had mentioned, Jeff, like getting a seat at a restaurant in Gen Con is just like impossible. And
right.
You have to walk a long ways. I mean, Gen Con is just bursting at the seams. They actually have put a limit on it. And I would say that even before they put that limit on it, it felt like you just had tons and tons of people, and it was so far to walk anywhere. And I think that it's kind of nice to see these kind of convention-style companies that have an infrastructure for making a convention experience, and seeing them, acknowledge the board game market is actually large enough to give people, give these conventions like for them to service this,
Right.
And I hope that kind of more of these things can continue to happen, because it's nice to have these in different locations. Like you mentioned, like the East and the West Coast really don't have any big board game conventions. The two, bigger ones are kind of in the middle of the country, the ones, during the summer. So it's kind of nice to see this sprouting up.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it's, I think they have big plans for this. And, you also have to understand, I'm very biased because, if it's, I just looked at what was going on. I looked at the reaction that people were having. I was listening to people from out of town talking about how much they were enjoying themselves and enjoying Philly. I heard one person say, like, man, this town has like almost like a West Coast kind of Seattle vibe, which I've never heard in my life. And I was just like, it's just, I don't know. Like, so to me, if it's good for the city, which I'm sure it will be if it stays there, it's going to bring money into the city. It's going to bring business into the city. But it's also going to kind of give an opportunity for people to experience the hobby, get to know the hobby, while they're also in a place where they can see some fantastic history, get some first-rate food, go to a world-class museum. Philadelphia Orchestra is phenomenal. I mean, you could easily make like a vacation out of this. And so, I'm thinking to myself that's like really cool. Like if it gets more people coming into Philadelphia, it has a lot to offer. It has its problems like every other major city. Isaac was talking on his podcast about, the very obvious homelessness, in Philadelphia. And, it's November, it's cold. You do have people kind of hanging out in the tunnel there, by the convention center. And so that problem's kind of right front and center. But I remember walking through Columbus and seeing a lot of homeless individuals as well. So, it's not like that's unique to Philadelphia. But I was also really encouraged to hear in Isaac's report that, there was, I wish I could remember who it was, but there's a company that is like going to make that part of their mission at PAX, like for next year, which is kind of doing some charitable work for the homeless. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's just showing kind of the heart of gamers. And, just listening to people talking about their experiences down in Chinatown and, buzzing over to Independence Hall and stuff like that. It was just really cool. It did my heart good.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that it's the type of thing that a city like Philadelphia sounds like it needs. So, and doesn't hurt that old Geof Gambill only has to drive across the street for it.
That's right, baby. Yeah, it's only about an hour and a half away from me. So that's that's good stuff. So now, guys, if you I don't know how you want to run this, Joe. I don't know if you would like to maybe do kind of a segue, give people a break from the sort of PAX reporting and get to hear some other voices here talking about some games to review. And then maybe later I could talk about some of the individual publishers. I kind of tried to, as I was kind of there in a media capacity, I kind of tried to talk to maybe some publishers and people that people might not have heard of. Some smaller kind of indie publishers and maybe less known people. Try to get them some exposure. And I saw some really cool things. So, we could talk about that now. We could talk about that a little later. Whatever you guys would like to do, I am here for you.
Excellent. Why don't we hear from Andy? And Andy, your review tonight's more of a first impression than a real review, but this is one that was quite an interesting little game. When you told me about it, my jaw almost dropped to the floor when you described it. Why don't you tell everybody about Turin Market?
Yeah, so Turin Market, it's basically, I don't know, the way I described it to a couple people was if Nasty Mean Auction Games had their version of Love Letter, that's kind of this game. So it's, in a sense, like a micro game. There's only like 27 cards in it and some little like wooden money tokens that were made. I heard about it when I was listening to, I think it was Punching Cardboard and Heavy Cardboard talking about BGG Con actually and playing this game, and it sounded phenomenal. So I basically ordered it while in the McDonald's drive-through while being handed my coffee on the way to school. I think I snagged the last copy on the BGG marketplace at the time.
So that's funny. That's funny, Andy, because that's not usually where good decisions happen at McDonald's. So I think you may have broken the rule there.
Exactly. But anyway, so we got to play this, and it's more of a first look because I guess to say about it, I'll talk about the one I think negative of the game, and that's the rule book could have been a lot more clear. That was not well written, and some of the rules that were supposed to be involved in all player counts were written in it in such a way where it kind of looks like it only applies to like a 5-player game. So that led to a few confusing matches, which I think we finally started getting right about our last play of it. But what it is you basically have cards. They have X number of goods on them. They always have like 3 of the one, like 3 fish, 2 oranges, and maybe olives or something like that. You put these cards out, you bid on them. There's only blind bids the whole entire time. You get basically $15 to start with, and that's the only money that's really going to be in the game. And so basically money can come, it can switch and whatever. Money can be lost from the economy where you have to pay the bank, but no money really comes into the economy. So you have to be really careful over these 3 or 4 rounds that you're going to play that you're valuing things very well. And the thing that I think was most confusing was what happens in tied bids. And when I finally figured and worked that one out, which I like, because normally in a blind bidding situation is if 2 people have equal bids, like say me and Trent are playing and we both bid $5. Well, you bid again. And the way it looks like it works in this game is if you bid a non-zero amount, you keep bidding. So if me and Trent bid one in the second bidding round, then we would have to bid again and again and so forth. Particularly nasty. Trent and I, we bid her $5, and then we're like, man, you know what? Maybe I don't want that card that bad after all. Maybe I'll just let Trent spend whatever money he's going to spend on the card, and I'll throw out a bid of nothing. Well, the problem is if both players bid nothing, the cards are just immediately discarded. Like they get nothing for it, and they lose half their bid.
Ouch.
So, yeah, it's
hardest tiebreakers in board games.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's really nasty. You have to value things very, very carefully. And it can be kind of weird because I did a situation in the game where I looked at the cards on offer and the one I had won previously, and I'm like, basically, if I can win this bidding round, I can just sit on my bottom the rest of the game and have a good shot of winning. And so I did that, and then that's pretty much what I did, which made it not a terribly interesting last 2 rounds for me, but it did win the game. But it is very nasty. You have to really value things well. You have to be very careful about what you're bidding. The nice part is if you get really shut out, if you overbid or something, like the game's 15 minutes long, and then you can just do it again if you want or go on to something else. So it falls into that category of sort of thinky filler for me, but basically in my mind, I like everything about the game but the rule book, which could use some serious help. And I think, don't quote me on this, but there's been hints that there will be a reprint or a Kickstarter re-release of this coming, so maybe those things could be addressed in it.
Yes.
Cool.
I think that this was a really interesting idea that had a lot of issues with clarity, like Andy was saying, and just it spoke to at a first design kind of, because this to me felt like a beginning project where the core idea of the game is a very interesting concept. Like the idea of just a small deck of cards, like 18 cards, each of which has these different values on it, and you're really going for an area majority in these cards. I would say not area majority, but just like a majority of the goods that are on these cards. And then any good that you have that you don't have the majority in is now going to cost you money. It's a really interesting and compelling system. The way that the auctions work, blind bidding is a little bit. I guess I personally take a bit of an issue with the way that the blind bidding and turn order works, because it's generally like if you are making the good decision, like the amount that you bid is just entirely based on what other people have kind of chosen. You don't really have information about it. So there's an awful lot of kind of like what's up in the air there. The cards that you actually take, though, like if you pay the most, you'll get to choose the first cards, you get to choose the most cards. So, I mean, it's just like inherently better. There's never any time when you bid in this game and you really want to not kind of take first, I would say. Andy, would you agree that there's not really much of a reason to bid and not take first? Because I felt like what happened in several times, and I don't know, Trent, you'll be able to speak to this as well, is that like if I bid a lot but not quite enough to win, I'd end up with like third place, and the third place person gets one card. They don't even get to choose that card. So a lot of times, if I bid third place, I would have bid $9. The winner bid $10. So I've like spent $1 less, and I get stuck with a card that literally makes me lose money instead of make money. Lose money, because like it gives me no majorities, and it just costs me money because other players already have those majorities locked down. So it's like I shouldn't have been bid either zero or bid to win.
Yeah, I think though in the game you have to be careful with the valuing of things. You have to be very careful with that. So for example, the last game I brought up where I said I basically bought all the cards I wanted in the first 2 rounds. I was looking at the majorities on those cards, and I'm like, if I win this round, I will get that. And I could look around at other people's cards they currently had in front of them and say, not only am I going to get paid out for this good, but I'm going to get at least $3 or $4 from everybody else. And it's like a lot of auction games. You want to bid to win, but if you overbid, you're taking yourself out of the game. Because if you bid $12 out of all the money you get on cards that are only going to, in the end of the game, pay you $9, you've lost money. It would have been better to just hold on to your $12. Right. So you have to be very careful in the bidding and analyzing it. And I would say,
but what if you bid $9? What if you've analyzed that all? You say, okay, well, this thing is worth $6, and then the person to your left bid $7. So now
they're screwing themselves equally, though.
Well, they're not necessarily screwing themselves. They just paid an extra $1, to get the same thing. Maybe they're paying an extra $1, but now you are out. You're $6, and you're stuck with second place. It seemed to me like
second place wasn't that bad though. Like it was really like in the 5-player game. I felt like it was. Oh, the 4 we played. A 4 that might be more of an issue, but I think in the 5-player game, like it was like 3rd, 4th, or 5th that was not the greatest position to be in. But I felt as blind bidding, at least towards the 3rd or 4th time we played it, I was really getting to where I could start to value what the bids would worth and be like, okay, how much do I really want to risk here? How much will I come out ahead if I can do X, Y, Z? And I think like any auction game like that, it's just going to take some repeated play to learn how to value certain aspects of the payouts and what they are.
Yeah. I just want there to be something besides a blind bid that determines turn order. Like a blind bid that determines turn order is very similar to like Archipelago. And that still gives me the chills. It gives me the chills to consider like the time when me and Nate were doing the blind bid for turn order in Archipelago. We each put out the same amount of money 3 times. And in Archipelago, guess what happens to that money?
Yep, that was fun.
Gone. We ended up bankrupt because we each were willing to up the bid by the same amount of time 3 times in a row, and it was just game over. So
I don't know. I felt more like the bids in this were less like that and more like container. Like there was a definite value. You could look at it and come up. It wasn't like an Archipelago. It feels like I'm bidding based on opportunity over the turn. I mean, there's not really a set value to anything, whereas this one feels a little more like Container. There's a set value to the cards out there. How much is it going to be worth to me to win this position? Or could I go second and deal with collecting a few other cards? But that's how it felt to me, more like that. Like I definitely had an idea of how to value things by about the third or fourth game of it.
Yeah, I think I do enjoy the fact, I like the idea of this game, and I do want to keep trying it, but I do feel like, Andy, as soon as I get your algorithm figured out, all I have to do to throw a wrench in it is bid $1 more than I know that you're kind of figuring things on. And so, yeah, the fact that it's a blind bid tied to turn order is always going to just, like, is there an ideal thing to take out there? Not necessarily, but kind of. It'll depend on situations, and you can sell cards, and that's where I really think that, like, we were
that's
not
like the next level we weren't in.
Yeah, that's the next level of this game. Like, you sell the card once you get it, and that way you actually kind of like are able to profit yourself from the sale. And I think really like that's necessary to really enjoy the game and the level the designer intended. So I don't want to say anything like my thoughts on this are anything more than just me kind of being interested, want to play it again, a little bit scared of the idea of the blind bid being tied to turn order and not just tied to specific cards. But all in all, a very cool and interesting concept. You can tell that this designer, the designer of Import Export, did love Container, and it's listed as one of his favorite games in the back of this kind of poorly executed rule book. It looks really pretty, but it's just not quite as functional. Oh, if you want your hands to smell kind of like burning logs, like this nice smell of burning logs, you need to buy this game and then just hold the money, because it's all laser cut and it just smells like nice campfire. It's just beautiful. This game has a great smell. I love the smell. Not quite as good as Keeper. Keeper smells amazing. But this is quite nice. Quite nice.
This is the second time I've heard about you huffing your games over there, Sal. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with this, to be honest with you.
It's a solid 15-minute game. It's a solid 15-minute auction game. It needed more refinement. It needed more refinement in the components. It needed more refinement in the rule book. It needed more refinement in making sure the player aids matched up. It needed more refinement in the font choice. It needed more polish. That's all I had to say about it. I'm excited for the second edition. If I play the first edition again and bind with it, it's a 15-minute game. Great. But honestly, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. If I had 15 minutes to sit down and play a card game like this, I can think of several others I'd rather play.
Okay.
So I won't object to playing it, but I want to see a second edition of this that has a lot of things polished up.
That's kind of my hope. Based on the rumor mill I've heard, that sounds likely. So that would be cool. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of scream like boutique labor of love publishment, where a few more eyes on it probably could have gone a long ways.
Yeah. But then again, Andy, it wouldn't be so just endearing. Like, it's like the girls love the bad boys, the same way Andy loves the poorly produced games.
It's like looking at the world's ugliest dog pictures. You're just like, poor boy. I will take you home.
Nice.
I now know what Andy does when he feels empty inside. All right. Let me jump in here with a little review. Kind of a little comic relief, just so you know how low brain power my brain has been operating out the last week. I'm going to review Exit: The Forgotten Island, which is one of the 3 new Exit games that has just been released by Cosmos, and this is the game that won the Kennerspiel. Not the Kenner. It's the Kennerspiel. Des Jahres last year. That's that German game of the year for connoisseur game, and it is an exit or unlock escape room type experience where you play the game once. Exit is different from other games in this series in that everything can be done without the need of any sort of app. So you can just play right out of the box. It uses a fancy decoder ring, and I guess I don't want to open the box and show anything, but because that could be bad. But anyway, it uses fancy little decoder ring that you put in your 3 different. There's You can kind of rotate these symbols to enter in a 3-digit code, and then whatever is revealed is the number of card you go and grab. And you are, in this game, going to be actually destroying components. You're going to have to cut things up. That involves the actual cards sometimes will be cut. There is a booklet that comes with the game that needs to be cut. And my comic relief for this one is that my brother had never played this game before. And so I made an accident when I was putting in the code for what we thought was an answer to a riddle. There's a specific riddle, and I accidentally put in these symbols in the incorrect order from what I was actually looking at. So it's kind of a little dyslexia accident. And I ended up solving the game in 5 minutes without doing any of the riddles. That was it. And I was like, hold on. And I went back and did it again. And I was like, oh, crap. Actually, we didn't just win. So I thought for sure that I was, like, oh, my gosh, 10 minutes? You got to be kidding me. There's no way they play tested this. And, it's because I apparently have dyslexia, or just like my brain was just too full. When we did actually come back and play through the Forgotten Island, I would have to say that together with the other game, the Polar Station, that we have played from this second wave of 3 exit games, I think the quality is just very generally high between this and the Polar Station. I think that the use of components is consistently challenging, and the puzzles are very challenging, and I just really greatly enjoyed the Forgotten Island, and I can't say terribly much more without spoiling it, but it had a lot of nice pirate theme to it. The idea of like pirate maps and stuff is just, I think, what they really ran with in this game, and I was very impressed with the way they went. So if you want a little escape room experience, but pay less money and have it in your house, I say check out Exit the Forgotten Island, me mateys.
Wow. Well, man, yeah, I mean, that would have been very frustrating to have that happen, to be able to kind of like accidentally solve the game in 5 minutes. Now, they have a very small price point, all things considered, because they are consumable games. Yep. And I've, messed around with them a little bit. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but, I've had fun with them. I haven't had that experience. So that's kind of surprising to me. I'm kind of shocked to hear that. So, hopefully that was just kind of a fluke, Joe.
Oh, it certainly was. I mean, it was a dyslexia accident. Like, you can't, I was saying this, you can play test everything and make sure that people don't accidentally find the solution to your riddles. But when somebody like reads something in the incorrect order and solves a puzzle that you're not even supposed to be able to solve yet, right, and whatever the solution they think that it is, you can't play test every possible solution. You can't just fix stupid.
You can't account for Salin is what you're trying to say.
This is entirely on me.
That's
it was.
That is the Salin coefficient, isn't it? Isn't that the Salin?
The Salin coefficient is how foolproof is the game. That's what it actually is. Yeah. I am so dumb that I need a special coefficient to help me and figure out whether or not the game's actually going to work. So Will had never played exit games at all, and that was his first experience. Was like, all right, let's go and look for a card for this card number, and let's flip it over. You escaped the island.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So this really sounds like a different version of the Joe by the way moments.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, maybe just call it the Joe No.
This is the same. It's just like Joe looking and going, "Oh, by the way, I just won the game."
Yeah, it's me talking to myself and saying, "Joe, no."
No, I actually did play an escape room game with my family over Thanksgiving break, so I've got one.
Andy, really? Was it the mystery? One of the mystery Stargazers?
Yeah, it was like that very first one that came out. Yeah.
Did it have the tangrams in it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The one bad part I did though was I was like, "Yeah, I should tweet a picture of us playing a game," and then like 5 minutes later, my wife's like, "Should you have like tweeted pictures of like mystery components?" And I'm like, "Oops."
Nice.
Message retracted.
Nice. Yeah.
I did the same thing. Like I go to take a picture and I'm like, hold on, let's wait until it's set up. Oh yeah. So I just take a picture of the box. So this island should not be forgotten, by the way. I think that the Forgotten Island is definitely much more than forgettable. So it is much better than that.
There we go.
Yeah, check that one out. We are now going to hear from Trent with his review, which, ladies and gentlemen, is one that I have been looking forward to because I actually typed it in on my own. So it'll be news to me what exactly he's reviewing, because if he was going to go off of what I typed in, I said Pulsar 2049 or whatever. But anyway, Trent, what are you actually reviewing?
That's actually what I'm going to review because you kind of requested that. I had a bunch of things I could have reviewed, but that seemed to be kind of what you wanted, so I'll talk about it.
Cool. I just needed to type something. I'm happy to hear about it though. I'm very interested because I saw you playing this last night.
Yeah, I played it 4 or 5 times now, so I feel like I can probably talk about it at a variety of player counts and such. Pulsar 2849 is a new game from CGE Games, designed by Vladimir Suchi, who's designed a few games for them. I know definitely The Alchemist, and I think
Shipyard. Did he do Shipyard?
He did Shipyard. He did the Prodigal Squad, The Last Will.
Last Will, yeah.
He's done several games for them. I will say right now, right off the bat, this is my favorite game he's done for them. So it's published by Czech Games Edition, is their new Essen release. I got to play this in late prototype at Gen Con. I played it a couple times at BGG Con. I played it a couple times since. I quite like it, so I'll get into what it's about. Basically, it's a dice drafting game. So you roll a bunch of dice, and you put them out on this track, and then players take turns drafting them. The thing with this is that it has a really interesting mechanism where you roll the dice, and then basically you put them out in order, and you figure out what the average dice value is, and you set this little marker based on what the average dice value is. And if you draft above that dice value, it has negative repercussions for your future turn order and for your future ability to get one type of resource. So, let's say the average is a 3 and you draft a 6, you're going to go down on one of those tracks 3 spaces. And the next time they readjust turn order, that's going to hurt you. Or you might have chosen the other track. The next time you get the resource called engineering cubes, you're going to get fewer of them. So basically, that's the drawback. On the other hand, if you draft a lower die, it's not going to be able to do as much during the game, but you're going to get to go up on one of those tracks. This game, so it's not entire. There's dice in it, and it's centered around dice. But when you're drafting them, and you have a lot of control over how you're drafting, because it does a snake draft style, and you get to decide which one you want. And there's always even the last person has a choice of 2 because you're rolling an extra dice. Plus, there's a lot of dice modifiers in the game. You get them just as a tack-on bonus reward for various things you do in the game. So you're not really driven by dice rolling. I would say even less so than Castles of Burgundy, for comparison's sake. I would say that the dice really don't control what you're doing all that much. It just gives you a little bit to think about how you're going to pull off what you were already intending to do. So it's not that controlled by dice. Most of the game you're spending, you have a little spaceship that you're moving around on a board. The board is double-sided. There's 2 different maps on each side. So you don't necessarily get to figure out this is the optimal route to take if you're this player, because it changes and it can rotate around. I mean, the board changes a fair amount based on where you start, because there's 4 different starting points, and which side you use. So there's no best way to figure out the board. Basically, most of the time you're moving your ship around the board. You're landing on and moving over planet tiles. Those are all laid face down on the board, and you flip them up as you go over them. If you happen to land on them, you get an extra bonus reward for landing on it. But if you go over it, you generally don't get a reward. You just get to drop your little token on it to say, I've been to this solar system, because those tiles represent a solar system. There's also these pulsars on the board, the titular pulsars. If you end your movement on a pulsar, you put a little ring that you have on it. This ring's kind of neat because there's another type of tile that you can buy with your dice that you put it in your ring when you put it in a ring on the board when you buy it, if you have an available ring, and then you spend another dice to flip it. And once you've flipped one of your pulsars, every single round for the rest of the game, you get some number of victory points based on the flip tile value. So essentially, you have to move onto a space, and then buy a tile, and then flip it. And once you've done those 3 steps with different dice value each time, then it's a point generator for the rest of the game. And it's a pretty good point generator, too. Typical end scores in this, I've seen around 70 or 80. And doing that generates you 3 to 5 points per round. So if you do that early, that's going to be like a quarter to a third of your victory points until the end game scoring. So that's quite a lot of points. So a lot of it's just moving around the board. You're buying these tiles and landing on different spots. But what's going on, and there's a couple. What's really interesting is some of the other things you can be doing. There are these. There's a tech tree. So during the game, you go through 8 rounds of the game, and on this tech tree that's available to everybody, during the first round, you can get any of the round 1 technologies that are available. There are 3 of them. You spend a die to put one of your markers on that technology, and it's a special ability you have for the rest of the game. Each round, as the marker moves up, you have the ability then to get during the second round, for example, you can buy any of the round 2 techs or any of the round 1 techs that are still available. There's only 2 spots on each one of them. All 4 players can't buy one of the techs. And as the rounds move, more and more unlock, but you can always buy old ones if you want to. The early game ones are very set you up with resources going forward. The mid game ones usually have a variety of abilities. The late game ones are usually very points oriented. It's not surprising, a very typical thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that moves along like that. So it's another thing you can do with the dice. Fourth thing you can do with the dice is you have a little tech tree in front of you. And you can buy upgrades on the small tech tree that you have. They're all different. Everybody has a slight variation on the tech tree. They're not hugely different. They're pretty balanced. I can't see any major differences between them. But they're basically what they're generally rewarding you for is there are different colored routes on the board, and for the most part, the different tech trees encourage you to follow one of those colors of routes. That's probably the best way of putting it. So one of them might, some of the easy to get techs on your board might encourage you to go on orange routes, whereas the easy to get techs on another player's board might encourage them to go on the green routes. For example, but they're very straightforward like that. Another thing you can do with your dice is there are individual technology tiles that come along, and you can buy those, and those give you either one-off rewards of different tokens or whatever, different resources in the game, or they give you something that's a small recurring reward at the end of each round. As I said, the game's 8 rounds, and again, you buy those with dice. They have different costs on them. Some of them cost 2 dice, some of them cost 1. And then if you have that dice face, then you just take the tile. Interesting thing is when you get those and you get the reward, you flip it over, and on the back is depicted half of a die. Then if you get another tile that depicts another half of a die and you flip it over and put it next to it, it combines together to form a bonus die for you to use just right then immediately. So one of the tiles might depict a half die with 3 dots on it, and then you pair it with another half die picture that has 1 dot on it, and it's as if you suddenly have a free 4 die, a 4-dot die. That's kind of a clever thing to do, and it makes you think a little bit more about which ones you're going to get. Not all of them have half dies on the back. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them have it only on the left, some of them have it only on the right. You got to think about things like that as you're getting them so you can play them next to each other. That covers most of the stuff you can do with die. There are also in-game victory point targets for everybody. They're set out at the edge of the board, and there are 3 of them. And they're like, if you do this thing, you're going to get 8 points. And then, as I mentioned earlier, one of the resources in the game is engineering cubes. I mentioned that way back in the beginning, that you get those as a reward for being high on one of the tracks when you're picking dice. The in-game scoring points, if you qualify for it, it'll say something like, if you've done this ability, whatever, if you've done this threshold, like you've discovered 5 technologies or you've visited 9 planets or whatever it might be, you get 8 points. Then it'll say, like, if you spend 3 research cubes right now, you get another 8 points. If you spend 2 more beyond that, you get another 8 points. And it'll say that right on the tile. So it encourages you not only to achieve those goals, but also to collect research cubes, because if you don't have any way to use them, they're just worth a point. So those are almost always a better use of the research cubes. And so basically, it's just a point it's a point generating game. It feels a little, I don't want to say feldish, because everything is really tied back to moving your ship around. That's really what everything is about. And it's about using text to move your ship more efficiently and things like that. but it does feel like there are points coming in from a lot of different angles. The game plays quickly, and the thing that's really amazing about it is everything is customizable. The tech trees, they come in 3 tiles. Like the master overall tech tree has made up of 3 tiles. All 3 of those tiles are double-sided. You can flip them into either orientation you want. And there are 2 tiles for each of the levels. So doing quick math in my head, there's somewhere around 256 possible tech trees you could have. And it would be different each game. You play 256 kinds of different tech trees. The little tech trees you have in front of you are double-sided. And they can permute, every player can have them, and there's different starting points on the board. The victory point tiles, there are 3 victory point tiles that indicate them. Those are double-sided, and there are actually 6 of them. You choose 3 of them at random in the game and then do them on a random side. All of those are random. And also the tiles that flip over that are available are very random as well. The ones you can buy, and then they give you some sort of resources that accumulate as an upkeep each round, and you flip over and get an extra bonus die. There's a whole bunch of those as well. So what ends up happening is, depending on how that stuff fleshes out, the game feels very different. All kinds of different things are going on in different games. Some of them feel like people are just racing around the board and are getting to 13, 14, 15 systems because the tech trees are encouraging them to move really fast around the board. Other ones are encouraging you to move really slow and accumulate lots of cubes. And it's almost like you're doing a resource management game, and you're very careful with the dice. Some of them encourage you to get a lot of the pulsars and get those flipped over and start generating a lot of points. And it really depends on what all the various tech trees and what that variant of the game that you're playing is. And to me, that makes it very interesting, because each time you sit down, you're not just doing more or less the same formula of the same thing every time. Sometimes you're racing. Sometimes you're accumulating resources. Sometimes you're doing this. Sometimes you're doing that. Sometimes you're really worried about your tech tree that's in front of you. Sometimes you're worried about the shared tech tree. Sometimes you're really worried about getting high-value dice. Sometimes you don't care. It really varies from game to game a lot. And that's something that has kept me coming back to it after 5 plays, and I can see me coming back to it for quite a while yet, is it does not feel the same game every time. I'd say it even feels more variable than Marco Polo does, in terms of how different it can feel from game to game.
You just got Joe very excited with that comment, Trent. So, I can tell right there.
He knows me, yes.
So Trent, you're saying that there's a lot of input variability into the game, right? So that's one of the reasons it's staying so fresh, right? Because you're able to flip all those tiles. And I also have to say that that quick math you did in your head, I was sitting here as you did that thinking to myself, if this was like an old-fashioned Old West gunfight and we were going to do quick math, the quick draw, I think you would have shot me before I even pushed my coat to the side. So well done, Trent, because I can't do math quite that fast. But I do like the fact any game that has input variety like that, because I'm not a huge fan of randomness during the game, especially if it's a game that is supposed to be kind of a medium or heavyweight game. It sounds like this is like a good midweight kind of a game. But boy, if you can vary the setup, if you can change things up so that you have something new to look at, new to consider, new plans to kind of make, paths to try, that really makes a game very replayable and an awful lot of fun. And so, from what you're describing, it sounds as though there's something else I'm going to have to ask Carmen to find for me. So thanks a lot, Trent. I really appreciate that.
I think anyone that enjoyed like Marco Polo will enjoy this. I would say that's. I don't want to guarantee that.
And there goes Joe's order right there. Bam. That just happened.
Get one of these in for me, Carmen. This is yep. Like I'm scratching. All right.
Yep. Joe's like Marco Polo.
Yeah.
Marco Polo. He hits the order about
Marco Polo.
It's not a repeat of Marco Polo by any means at all. I mean, it's quite different, but it felt like it's scratching kind of vaguely the same itch.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an expansion coming out for Marco Polo as well. That's already been out in Germany, right, Geof? You may have seen that a little bit when you were in Essen.
Yep. Yes, I did. I tried to actually get a copy for you, but I did not have any luck. So I kind of went there the first day, and the booth line was just insane. And I was like, yeah, I'll come back. And then I came back, and they're like, nope, all gone. But we might get some back. You know, we might get some more on Saturday. And I was like, all right, fine. And then I think I went back late Saturday, and they were like, yeah, they were here, but now they're gone. But then some other booth might have some if you run over there. And I was like, all right, whatever, forget it. Joe's going to have to wait. So sorry about that. I was thinking about you, but nah, I wasn't gonna go chasing that one to a secondary seller at Essen. That place was a zoo.
Well, as long as you and Carmen get a chance to play the Kama Sutra game, that's fine. That was the first thing, first and foremost. That's what I wanted.
That's
yep.
Anyway, hey, you know, it's different for sure. All right,
Geoff,
so I guess I'm
talking
up
about
next,
your experiences. Yeah, you go
you're
now.
Making me follow. God. You're making me follow Trent, huh? Okay, so I'm going to do a much less impressive job of describing the game than Trent did, but I'm actually going to do like two kind of mini reviews here. The first one I want to talk about is Eminent Domain Oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Eminent Domain. Eminent Domain first came out, and I really enjoyed the way the game played. It was a really kind of a cool and intriguing sort of engine for the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every time you want to perform a role, basically, it's a card kind of driven game. It's got a little bit of a sort of a feeling similarity to like a role selection game, almost like a Glory to Rome kind of thing from time to time, with powers and different things that you can do with and going and checking out different planets and seeing what you can find. But the base game was kind of a little bit vanilla. Mm-hmm. It was kind of generic. Like there were planets that you could go and try to explore, and all these different tech decks that were tied to the different planets. And but a lot of it, there were like different colored resources in the game. There was like water and minerals and different kinds of resources, but it didn't really matter which one you had. Resources were just resources. And there were ships in the game. You know, there were these little ships that they looked like they got them from the same, what was it? Adam West did a game called Galactic
Eclipse.
Emperor. And or Eclipse, yeah. And they look, kind of like the little plastic ships from there. And they were kind of cool, but really they were just kind of like change. It's like, if 3 fighters equals this, and then 2 of these equals that. And it was kind of like, well, that's a little disappointing. It's cool to have all these little plastic bits, but I wish there was some differentiation. And so I was almost ready to move it on, in all honesty. And then I heard that there was an expansion coming, and I thought, all right, let me hold on. Let me wait and see what the expansion does. And so I'm glad I held on to it, because with each expansion that's come out, I think it's kind of improved the game. It's like it's like unfolding kind of different ideas in the design, and it's offering different paths, different avenues for you to explore, and that differentiation that I was hoping for. Does it matter what the resources are? It's beginning to matter. Do the ships matter? Yes. Now the ships matter. Some planets you might need a dreadnought for. Others you might need a cruiser. And so there were these different kind of things that were coming into play, and I really enjoyed it. And different types of planets. There's the exotic planets that came out with the Exotica expansion. And so each expansion made the game better. And really kind of what it seemed to do was it took the sort of roles that you can take in the game. There's a colonization role where you're trying to settle planets. There is a warfare role where you're trying to, up your military strength and then just go and attack and take over planets. There is a survey role where you're kind of going out and exploring and finding planets for you to either colonize or take over. And there's a research role where you kind of have a tech tree, kind of like Trent was talking about with his game. There's, different tech trees that are going to do different things, help you be more efficient at some things, break some rules with others. And, there are like 3 different levels of text depending on how much research you could bring to bear. And that was cool. And then there was this weird little politics card, and everybody got a politics card. And basically all that it did was you discarded it at some point of the game, and you got to take one of these role cards from the central display and add it to your deck, because that's kind of the deck building part of the game. Every time you take a role in this game, what you're going to do is you're going to select from a central display one of the cards that matches the role, colonization or warfare or whatever, and you're going to lay that out in front of you, take that role, and then you can boost the power of that role by discarding similar cards from your hand that you already had. And so you get more and more efficient, you get better and better at roles that you're selecting often, because more of those cards are going to enter your deck, which means more of those cards are going to cycle through, and more of them will find their way into your hand. So you can kind of individually tailor your deck and to kind of fit your strategy. And then the other cool part, you know, the sort of the glory to Rome kind of a feel was whether or not you choose, your opponents then have the option to either follow that role, or they can do what's dissent. So instead of thinking, you can dissent, which basically means you get to draw a free card, which might be the very card that you needed to research that level 2 tech, and isn't that awesome? So it really had a lot of things going for it that was cool. But I remember, you know, still my greatest area of dissatisfaction with the game, after all of the expansions kind of, I don't want to say fixed, but I think a better way to say is fleshed out what the sort of game originally offered, was that politics role. And what Oblivion does in this latest expansion is it makes politics like a real thing. So now, instead of just using a politics card, you can still do it. You can still discard the card and you know, take another warfare card because you really want to kind of push yourself in that direction, perhaps. But politics is now an actual thing, and I love that, because one of the things that has always been sort of my litmus test, and I'd be curious what you would think about this, Trent, is like, you know, there's so many space games out there, space-themed games that I really, really enjoy. But one of the things that like Twilight Imperium did that I absolutely love was that whole politics part of the game, the whole sort of negotiation part of the game that made it kind of feel like, you know, empires struggling not only militarily but also politically and economically, and it kind of really fleshed out the whole conflict. So it wasn't just about exploring and exterminating and whatever all the 4 X's are. You know, that extra P, the politics, was always something that I was really fascinated with in Twilight Imperium, and really wish that other games would do something with it. Well, finally, what we have here is Oblivion kind of does that. So one of the things that you can do is now you can play a politics card for a political action. And what you can do is there's a whole bag now of these little chits. You do a chit pull, and each of the chits is basically what you would think of as political influence or political capital. And it also, every one of the chips on the other side of it has a symbol that matches one of the roles. So you can either accumulate those political chips to do something in the game, which I'll get to in a moment, or you can spend those political chips for the matching sort of icon. So I can spend my political influence to boost my colonization efforts or something like that. So really, really kind of a cool concept, and a way to kind of, it actually speeds up the game. It accelerates the game, because now you're not waiting to get a hand of, you know, 5 research cards so that you can pull off. No, you know, if you've got some political influence that matches research, you can throw that into the mix, and now all of a sudden you're jumping way ahead in the tech tree and getting a really powerful ability. But of course, everybody else can do that too, and so it's kind of cool. So far, it seems like it's pretty decently balanced in that way. But perhaps one of the more exciting things to me is the idea that there's now a politics role. So what you can do is you can play politics cards now to activate what's called agendas. So there's a new board that comes with the game, a little central board. So now the board doesn't just hold the cards, but it also has slots for what are called upcoming agendas and then current agendas. And so these are little things that might give you an advantage if you have more, you know, fertile planets. You know, if you have the most fertile planets, you get an extra resource or something per turn, or you can do an extra sell action or something like that. Or it might be, something that is going to rein in one of those rolls, okay? Maybe a slightly dampening effect on a roll. Or it could be like bonus point scoring, like you're going to score points every time you do this thing or that thing. So these agendas are all arrayed, and each of them has a different political cost to them, as represented by those chips, those politics chips that I'm talking about. So what you do is you play the politics role and you propose an agenda. And you don't even have to have enough political influence to pass that agenda. What you can do is you propose the agenda to the table. The table then can decide if they want to help support that agenda. So maybe it's really advantageous to me and Joe, but it's going to hurt Trent. So I might be able to count on Joe being willing to back me on this because it's going to help the both of us. And so Joe's like, yeah, I'll spend some of my political capital to make this agenda, a reality.
No,
and
I don't.
So
I
he'll
don't
spend
trust Geof
his.
Gambill. I wouldn't do that. I don't like this example. Use Andy.
I spend the rest of my political capital, and that agenda now moves to the other side of the board where it's now active. And so that agenda is now going to be active until either I think it's 5 more agendas get passed, which will kind of push it off the board and it kind of expires, or until someone decides to use a political role to get rid of that agenda. So they can then, Trent could say, well, that's Bush League. I don't like that at all. You guys are going to be scoring those points. So I'm going to actually, a couple turns later, Trent has some cards in his hand. He's done some political maneuvering. He's got some political capital in the form of those chits. And so Trent will then propose to get rid of this agenda. And, if he has enough capital, he can do it all on his own if he wants to. Or he can ask for help from maybe Andy, and Andy's like, well, I don't really care because it didn't hurt me any, but
no,
if I help.
Wait, that doesn't sound like Andy. Andy, forget you.
Doesn't sound like Andy. I was thinking that Andy was going to try to weasel his way into future favor or consideration, but, you guys know him better than I do as far as his gaming habits go. I know Andy used to be nice, and now apparently he's very cutthroat. So, yeah. So now there's like this whole political kind of part of the game that's very streamlined. It's not like, open-end negotiation where it's going to drag the game to a halt and it's going to become frustrating. But it offers up a lot of choices, and there's a big deck of these agenda cards that comes with the expansion. So the bottom line is this. I really, really like this expansion. To me, it kind of completes the whole sort of eminent domain experience. The rules overhead is not intimidating at all, You're really only talking about a couple new things you can do, but boy, those new things open up a lot of different avenues. So I'm a big fan of this expansion. And the last one of the I forgot about this one. One of the last things you can do is you can use your political influence to annex planets. So now I don't have to attack them. I don't have to colonize them. I'm just going to annex them. I'm going to negotiate for them. And so I can use my political capital to annex a planet. So that's awesome too. So, all of these different things, all these different parts come together in an expansion that I'm a big fan of. So I've played it at a few different player counts. I've played it probably about 5 times. And my initial impressions are very positive. So those are my thoughts about Eminent Domain Oblivion.
Cool. Yeah, Trent, have you gotten a chance to try this one out at all?
No, it's not. I don't believe it's out yet.
Ooh.
Not in general release. So no.
It might not be. It might not be. Tasty Minstrel did send a review copy my way. So if it's not out yet, it's coming very soon.
Yep, I haven't tried it. I'm going to dump it right into my Eminent Domain the second I get it, because Eminent Domain is one of my favorite games.
Sweet. All right, well, speaking of review copies, Geof, sounds like you got the lowdown on quite a few different games there at PAXU. Yeah,
I do. I do. And, one of the ones, that I want to talk about is actually going to kind of be in my report. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to kind of take a little walk down memory lane here and talk a little bit about what I saw. So a lot of the publishers were there, of course. North Star was there. They had a big presence. Stronghold was there with the cardboard cut Bonacore, which was quite funny. It was like Flat Steven. More pictures, I think, were taken with the flat Bonacore than, I don't know, people just abusing it, doing horrible, tasteless things to it, being very gentle and loving with it. They took pictures of it at the restaurant. I think they took it to the restaurant at night to take pictures with Flat Steven. So, that was kind of amusing. A lot of the publishers were there that you would recognize. CMON was there, but then there were also a lot of smaller publishers, and so those are kind of the ones that I want to highlight the most here. So, Andy, I don't know if you're aware of these guys, but Genius Games. I spoke with John, who's the president of the company. This is the company that makes these like really interesting science-themed games. So they're the ones that came out with a game like called Peptide. Another game that they had is Cytosine, is a new game coming out talking about cell biology.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
And so what he's done is he's taken his kind of love for science. I mean, that's kind of his background, and he's making these science-themed games. And he really has this really strong sense of mission about trying to get people to play games, have fun, but also kind of teach you something unobtrusively, kind of on the side. So I really kind of respect that. It seems like from the demos I saw, we're definitely talking game first design here. It's not just a painful kind of a school game. Like we've all either tried to make those ourselves, or we've done where it's so obviously school practice of this or that concept is kind of like whatever. These are definitely more engaging games, but they kind of give you that real kind of hardcore science kind of background. So to me, it kind of felt in some ways, Andy, I'll talk to you kind of directly because I know that you're a big Phil Eklund fan. So you think about something like BIOS Genesis, okay, and then tone that down about 8 or 10 notches, right? And that's where this guy lives, right? So
a couple of these would be right up Trent's wife's alley, like about molecular building chemistry stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. So it was really cool, and one of the things that I wanted to give a shout out to him about. But he said that one of his goals was to try to get some of these to schools and classrooms because we definitely need an increase in science education. Science has for a while now been kind of like marginalized and almost kind of vilified, at least in my opinion. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. Questioned, scientific facts being questioned as treated like their opinions, rather than tried, tested, and true scientific facts and explanations for the world as we understand it at this moment. Not to mean it might not change later, but for right now, boy, this is the way the world works, and please stop telling me it's just my opinion. So science has been really heavily eroded.
I had a student
and I'm really looking forward to this kind of idea of trying to kind of anything to get science back in the forefront in this country. I think is a great thing. And so what he's really looking for is a way to try to kind of gather enough teachers together that he can kind of centralize a pitch, you know what I mean? And he and I were trying to kind of figure out ways to do that. I was talking about some of the science teacher organizations there are. Maybe he could go to conventions for that. And, try to kind of put this in front of teachers and say, hey, this might be something you could use in your biology classes. So kudos to him for designing fun games, really engaging, but with some actual kind of hard science behind them to get people interested. So I was really psyched to hear about that. Have any of you had any experience with any of his games? This is from Genius Games.
No, I'm unfamiliar with them.
No. No, other than I think I saw, was Cytosis the one that was on Cell Biology? Was that, I think I saw a Kickstarter for that or something. That sounds vaguely familiar, yeah. I remember seeing it at the time and thinking that would be cool to buy, but also looking at my budget and going, but I can't.
Maybe not. Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of shiny out there right now, my friend. So it's difficult to kind of figure out, what you should and should not get. I'm having that problem with, Carmen all the time now because he keeps getting games that I want. And I asked him, "Are you getting Pulsar, in that Trent was talking about?" He's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Dang it! Something else I got to add to my list." So yeah, I definitely hear you on that one, Andy.
Another thing,
hey,
this guy's
go
website.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, another thing that is kind of important, I think, from the science perspective, I was just playing around on the Genius Games website, and he's got all kinds of books about famous women in chemistry, physics, and biology, which I think is really cool from the science outreach perspective as well.
Absolutely. And that you said, what is the website actually called? I didn't write that down. I just have Genius Games here.
Yeah, geniusgames.org.
Oh, .org. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I definitely recommend people check that out. The next one I kind of stumbled on was a gentleman by the name of Kevin who runs Baba Geek Games. And he has this little game that he's designing called Robot Riddle. And it is sort of a storytelling kind of a game. There are 3 little kind of almost like choose your own adventure style spiral bound books that come in the game. And each of those, of course, is completely different. And what makes this different is it's not just the same kind of like, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm denigrating like Above and Below and Near and Far, because I love those games, but it's not just like, oh, we'll go here and look up this story and read it. What it also has to do with is this sort of storytelling that he's trying to weave into the game. So there are dice in the game. So just like in Near and Far or Above and Below, you might have an encounter. And in that encounter, there might be some sort of a challenge or a test, or you might meet someone or something that's like very nervous, that is unsure about whether or not they want to talk to you. And so depending on how successful you are in your negotiating skills and trying to calm this creature that you found, and in the case I'm thinking of, it's like a little robot that's lost itself, because it's kind of set in this little robot world. You have to roll some dice, and the number of successes you get will take you to different pages where you will get either really good information or maybe not so good information, right? Depending on how successful you are. But what he's done with this game is he's added a way to mitigate the dice that is very unique. And this is what I love about it, because I'm terrible with dice, but I love games that have dice mitigation. So, hey, Trent mentioned, I think it was Castles of Burgundy. Yeah, I can be just totally messed over by Castles of Burgundy. Like, I never seem to get what I want, but I always make sure I have lots of workers so that I can change my dice, basically to whatever it is that I need them to be. I can mitigate that, right? Well, in this game, the dice mitigation is you basically are going to be able to improve your result by telling stories. And each of the character cards that you have in front of you as kind of like your team of adventurers on this little expedition have almost like what look like little story starter lines, like half lines of text. And so if you can creatively figure out a way to use one of those half lines of text to tell a story that will improve, so if you really fail at trying to calm this little robot down, if you can use one of these little story starter texts to then use that plus whatever you come up with yourself creatively, almost like a role-playing thing, where you can tell a story about how you really were able to calm him down. You were able to find something that he wanted. You pulled something out of your pocket, and it was a gear that he had been looking for, and so he now is looking at you more favorably. Blah blah blah. So then you can mitigate that result to get the better result. But every time you do that, you have to kind of mark your card that you've used that story starter. And so you only have a limited number of these that you can use. But one of the kind of things that can happen to you during the course of the game is you can meet more characters, add them to your team. They have their own story starters. You can also get cards that will give you more story starters and more opportunities to mitigate your dice. So it's kind of like a cool take on that sort of adventuring where you're rolling dice, but it's bringing out that sort of verbal linguistic kind of creativity to kind of add a storytelling element that reminds me a little bit of maybe Once Upon a Time, but much less freeform, because you have a little bit more guidance in where to go with your story. So I really like this. I thought it was very cool. He's got that, there's 20 different endings for each of the 3 books, and there's a lot of replay, I think, in it for what he's doing. And again, I kind of applaud the sort of idea of creative storytelling, because as a teacher, I can tell you one thing, boy, if I give my students an opportunity to just tell me a story, they really can't do it. Like, they really struggle. They're so used to everything being kind of given to them that their ability to create something out of whole cloth is kind of gone. And so now, with this game, you get a little bit of a hint, you have some setting, you have something a little more to anchor yourself in, but then it's going to encourage you to be creative. And so I think that would be fun for gamers, but also, great for families too. So that's from Baba Geek Games. That's the Robit Riddle, R-O-B-I-T, Robit Riddle. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but that's one of the games I saw there.
No information for me. That's Robit Riddle. Sounds like an interesting,
very cool
new designer. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Another one that I talked to, of course, was Dr. Finn from Dr. Finn's Games. He was there, and he's put out a lot of really fun games, light kind of fun games like Cosmic Run and Herbaceous and all kinds of, Steve Finn is the designer of Biblios that a lot of people might remember as Scripts and Scribes. So he's been designing for a while. And so I kind of had a chance to talk with him. He's working on another game with the people who he did Herbaceous with at Pencil First Games called Sunset Over Water, which is this really cool kind of game about painting landscapes. So, God, I mean, Steve Finn, he works with and he comes up with very unique designs, which is one of the cool things that I found about him. And he's also got his game, The Little Flower Shop, coming out in February, which is pretty cool, which sounds very strange to say about a game called The Little Flower Shop. I played this at ConCon with him in its prototype form, and it's quite clever. So, you're basically running a flower shop, and you are trying to put different displays and combinations of flowers in the displays in the front window of your store and around your store. And, I can hear I can hear the eyes rolling, but it actually was quite fun. So it was neat, quite a clever and very different theme. It's one of the things I like about him. He has another game coming out called The Waters of Nereus, who he told me is a minor Greek god of water, which I had no idea about. And that's like an exploration game. It uses this kind of shared worker placement kind of idea where the players all select actions, but the first one to use a particular power of the action that they've selected is going to get a better benefit than anybody who kind of came later. So that sounds kind of cool. And he also talked about his new Cosmic Run, which is coming out. A new version adding a 6th planet and new alien races and some refinements and tweaks to the rules to that. So that's what's new with Steve Finn. So really enjoyed, seeing the stuff that he's got coming down the pipeline there. Let's see. Next one I went to was Cool Mini or Not.
boy.
Lots of traffic. Yeah, lots of traffic there. And they had a new game coming out called Richard the Lionheart. It's a board game, massive kind of board game, minis. It's they called it kind of an extreme Euro game about sort of the aristocracy of England. And one of the things that you're kind of doing in the game is not only you sort of fighting against the other players, but you're also kind of fighting against the game. It kind of sounds almost like a little Game of Thrones, where you have kind of like, the Wildings deck and stuff like that going on, resource management and stuff like that going on. So I'd say it looked like a mid to medium heavy Euro game with a lot of direct conflict, but also kind of more of the grand scale sort of stuff. So that looked kind of cool. I was pretty intrigued by that. And of course, since it's CMON, it looks beautiful. And they didn't have any of the Song of Ice and Fire going on as far as like for sale, but they had some demos, and that of course looked cool. And Eric Lang's new Rising Sun. I mean, I've been hearing about this one for a while, guys. And
I think this one could take our group.
Yeah, I'm really pumped for it.
Mm-hmm. It just looks really cool.
Yeah, I'm really pumped for it. So I couldn't get into that though. Like that demo table was constantly full, and there were people constantly around, kind of peering over the shoulders of everybody playing, and it was definitely a hot and popular title that people were checking out. So that was kind of cool. Here's something a little bit off the beaten track that was kind of interesting to me. I don't know if anybody knows Jim Reed. Jim Reed is a fellow podcaster, and he has started what I thought was just a brilliant idea, guys. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. He said he's not the only one doing it, but I loved it. He's doing mobile escape rooms. So what he does is he has like this whole like camper. It's like a camper that is the escape room, and it was like, there's like this, like the inside of it was like all done up, and like the kitchen, like, they had stuff where like, there was something that, you could see down in the garbage disposal, but when you put your hand down there, it triggered like a little switch that made it sound like the garbage disposal was coming on, even though it wasn't. And then, the bathroom is just like covered in blood. It's just, so they totally do up an entire escape room in like a trailer, and it's like themed, like it's, like I think he said the next one they're doing is like a survivalist kind of a, like a survivalist gone wrong, and like a, trailer, and everything's all camoed out and militaried out and stuff like that. And so what they do is they take this thing to conventions, and people who are at the convention can just kind of come out of the convention. They have their space, they got their permits, and people just kind of come in and do the escape room in this sort of mobile environment. I was like, that's really clever. Like I really thought that was a cool idea, because after playing board games, what could be better than doing an escape room? So I really applauded him for that. I thought that was like a really clever thing, and I look forward to hearing what he's doing with it, because it just sounded like a blast, like a lot of fun. I didn't have a chance to go through it because I didn't actually have the chance to chat with him until Sunday when things were winding down. But I would definitely be on the lookout. He says he's going to be hitting a lot of the major conventions coming up this year. So that was something I just kind of wanted to mention. It's a little off topic, but not really, because it's cool. So let's see. Oh my goodness. I talked to, who are the people that did Spirit Islands?
Greater Than Games.
There we go, Greater Than Games. So we talked with them.
Can I say it really quick here, Jeff? Before
our discount, go for it.
Remind everybody that for everyone who's participating in the live recording of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Spirit Island, this amazing game that I have sitting over here just off camera. This is my copy that I personally bought from Carmen, and it sounds like Dean there has got John company recently, which I was saying we should put that in the podcast picks. Spirit Island.
Oh yeah, I love that.
It sounds really interesting. Spirit Island, firmly in our podcast picks, one that I really love, and Trent's talked about enjoying it. And Anyway, I just got the new expansion spirit boards that they were only giving away at, or not giving away, but selling at the convention. Anyway, special offer for everybody listening here and for everybody who's jumped in our chat. The code to get $10, not 10%, $10 right off of the price of Spirit Island is all.
Wait, how much was that again, Joe?
$10, not 10%, Geof Gambill.
I thought I misheard you.
Whole dollars. That is like something around like.
You got the infomercial voice on. I love it.
I mean, I'm telling you, dude. I spent more money than our listeners if they are going to go out and do the same thing I would do if I didn't have this game, which is buy it. I spent more money on this game than they did, and you know what? I'm happy to do it though because I enjoy this game, and it's one of the things I'm really passionate about. Spirit Island's an excellent game. I love it. Gives me the feels playing it. Excellent gameplay. $10 off. That code is Spirit Island GBU, all lowercase. Spirit Island GBU, all one word, all lowercase. That is all one word, all lowercase. You get $10 off. Add to that the all caps GBU code, which is for all of our podcast picks. 10% off of those, and you're taking that off of an already discounted price. So, Carmen, I don't know how you do it, dude. And I think honestly, I don't think Carmen is planning on this being like a huge cash cow for him. I honestly think that he wants to reward the listeners here of the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, and to build up his reputation among the folks that listen to this. So, and that's just the type of guy that he is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, the Spirit Island people call them. Yeah, I mean they had a lot of the games there for sale, and then they also had a couple other games that were kind of interesting. They had a game called Laser Riders, which I'm listening to the guy explain the game to me, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know this. And as he keeps talking, I'm like, it's Tron. It's like Tron, the board game. So yeah, basically it's the light cycle race. So like if you remember Tron. If you're of a certain vintage, like I am, and you remember the original Tron movie with the sort of laser kind of light cycle race, that's kind of exactly what this game is. So it looks really kind of cool. It uses movement templates, kind of like X-Wing does, and so it's not like you're on a board or anything. It just kind of uses those same kind of maneuver kind of templates, which is really cool. And your speed has an effect on maneuverability, which is really kind of nifty as well. So the designers are apparently locals from Philly, and it won the 2017 Philadelphia Geek Awards Game of the Year. So I thought that was kind of cool because I have fond memories of that awesome, cheesy movie. And then they made a bad sequel, but, you know, whatever. It wasn't really a sequel, it was a remake, right? And let's see, they had Fate of the Elder Gods there. That seemed to be doing well. But the other kind of interesting news out of their company was they released the Sentinels comic role-playing game. So this is something apparently that had been in the works for a little while, and they had just started releasing it, and it was entering distribution as of the time of the con. So it's probably available now, or will be, available very soon. So right now what they're offering is kind of like almost a D&D 5th edition kind of box set, which is sort of an introduction to the role-playing game. And then they're going to be coming out with kind of like core rule books later. And that's going to be like a Kickstarter, I think, next year. But for those people who are, looking for that kind of really cool, great superhero sort of RPG that isn't grounded necessarily in the commercial properties of like Marvel or DC, Sentinels is kind of throwing their hat in the ring there. And so they're offering a sort of a role-playing game experience, that sounds kind of interesting. I used to play RPGs all the time when I was younger. Sadly, I kind of don't have the time for it anymore, but I have a lot of fond memories. So that definitely piqued my interest, and I wanted to share it with people so that they knew that that was coming out. So yeah, kind of like some of the highlights, other than, some of the big publishers, Stronghold had Space Freaks that came out, which is a really weird kind of garish looking bright pink box, but The game itself is like really fast and a lot of fun, actually. It's not difficult to learn, and it's really quick to play. And I was like, that's kind of cool. So that kind of took me by surprise. I was looking for Noria, which I've heard quite a few people talking about, but they didn't have copies there. I guess they're not released here in the U.S. yet. So I was kind of like, dang it. You know, I was looking forward to trying that one out because that's kind of got like hot rondelle on rondelle on rondelle action. And, you know, I haven't really seen that since Shipyard. So I think Shipyard has the most rondelles of any game I've ever seen. But this Noria, where you're kind of building this three-leveled kind of three-dimensional wheel kind of thing. It's almost like Zolkin with like wheels on top of wheels. Looked really kind of cool and intriguing to me, but unfortunately they didn't have that there, so I can't really report about that. So yeah, that's kind of you know, some of the highlights of the things that I saw at PAX. So I know that's been a lot of me talking, a lot of info, but I wanted to kind of you know, cover some of the things that I saw and try to highlight some people that maybe don't get a lot of press.
Sure, yeah. Well, I appreciate you mentioning specifically some of those folks I'd never even heard of before, Geoff, and I think that was very helpful and very nice of you to go and shine a light on what they're doing specifically regarding some of the educational themed games, as well as just some other like little smaller publishers here and there that I would have maybe even the folks that were at PAXU didn't get a chance to see. And it sounds like we have Dean in our chat here, Geoff, who was actually there at PAXU, and it sounds like Dean actually was maybe playing a game with you. Does that sound right? You played John Company?
I didn't play John Company there. I got there too late. They had already started. They were sitting right next to us. I think that was the game that Carmen was playing.
Him there. Okay, cool.
Yeah, got to see him. My wife and I had like a nice dinner and had a few drinks, and I don't think either of us were really feeling any pain, and we kind of got there late, and I was like, you know, that they had already started, and I was like, thank God, because I don't want to try and explain John Company or wrap my mind around John Company when I've had a few drinks. So we met another really nice couple there, and we played, I think, London with them, and we played something else with them. I'm trying to remember what it was. The second edition of London we played with them, and then we played another game and had a blast with them. But Carmen and I guess Dean were kind of next to us playing John Company. And so, yeah, unfortunately I got to say hello, but I didn't have a chance to play it with him. So, you know, hopefully Dean enjoyed it, because I really find that to be a wholly unique game. I mean, Cole is designing some very unique games, which is something I'm really psyched about.
Yeah, very, very cool. So I'm looking forward to definitely to his game Root that's coming out. That's going to be kind of like, you know, that Redwall coin, but his sort of, he said, his own take on coin. So not the same as what coin is, which makes me very interested. Cole's designs and just him having a role in a game makes me instantly interested in just the way that guy pushes game design spaces. Like he blows them up in a direction that nobody else does.
Right. Yeah. No, without a doubt, I think so. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of, you know, my kind of report, you know, from PAX. I mean, just to kind of sum up, I think it was a great launch. I think it was, I think people seem to really be enjoying themselves by and large. I never witnessed any problems or difficulties. I thought that it was extremely well run. I enjoyed listening to people talk about Philly.
I will take, you know, any complaints about Geof Gambill at PAXU. You can just forward them right to my email, and I will take any of those. I understand, you know, you don't really want to talk directly to him. I'll make sure to send him passive-aggressive messages. And,
excellent.
Yeah, use it as leverage anytime I need Geoff to do something.
There you go. Well, you know. Anyway, guys, I want to say thank you for, you know, making the time so that we could talk about this con, but also talk about some of the great games that we've been playing. And Trent has spent more of my money, that's for sure. I think I'll wait for the second edition of Andy's Monstrosity. And yeah, I'm anxious to hear what Trent thinks about Oblivion, because I've been a big fan of it so far. So cool. So is there anything that you guys want to write before we end this? Because not something that I used to do on the Long View, but The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly has a long, rich, and storied tradition of ending the shows with hype sections where they talk about games that they're really looking forward to. So what do you guys have that is on your radar that you're kind of curious about, or that has your interest piqued?
Andy, why don't you go really quick, because yours is kind of more of a blurb, and I almost was wondering whether or not, Geoff, some of the places that you went to that were looking for kind of like educational uses for these games. Andy's going to be talking about a couple of games that could have some really interesting sort of anthropological and maybe even scientific applications in classrooms.
Yeah,
nice.
No, yeah, Phil Eklund in classroom, maybe college level. I don't know.
You're all like industrial people.
Yeah, doing that in the middle school classroom is a recipe for disaster. They what was it? It was this week, I want to think, announced a Kickstarter for new editions for Neanderthal and Greenland. It's something that I noticed kind of Phil doing with like other partners and stuff over the last year or so, kind of re-releasing his games to a wider audience, and kind of putting in the prospect of upgraded components within them. Because if you go to older Sierra Madre titles, the components are perfectly functionable, but not necessarily aesthetically awesome.
And that's a nice Andy word. I like it.
Yep.
Functional. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, they work for what you need.
That's goodly word.
Yes, goodly word. But
that's a goodly word. It's the United States. Anyway.
Yeah. So apparently they're going to do with these what they kind of did with BIOS Genesis, which got upgraded card art and better player aids and things like that. But what really sold me on it was they're like, each faction will have custom meeples. I'm like, wait, what? Custom Neanderthals? Sold. I didn't need to hear anything more. Custom chromatic meeples.
One of the stretch goals is a screen print of Andy.
Yeah.
On the meeples.
Yep. That would probably work.
Andy, I love you. You're my favorite Neanderthal.
Yeah, especially if I like grew a beard and stuff and a caveman.
I'm pretty sure the Geico commercials would sue you.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, I am looking forward to the Kickstarter there, and hopefully things running smoothly. I know with his recent one with the BIOS Genesis, there was some snafu with like misprinted cards, so that's like delayed everything to February, which some people were all up in arms about. I was like, the pile of shame is already large. I have enough to deal with anyway. I can afford to wait. But no, I really do like Sierra Madre games. As Trent puts it, I think they're like my version of like Ameritrash games or something. But yeah. I don't know. Upgraded components, sure, awesome. I'll probably back these just because I like supporting them and all the weirdness that they produce.
Nice. All right. Well, that was very cool. Trent, would you like to tell us about this personal little story that I just love so much? This new game Trent's actually helping to play test. It's called Taekwondo Fart.
I'd rather pass on that one. I'll pass on that one for now. Yeah.
It sounds like a martial arts.
It should be like Taekwondo Fart Dojo. That would be like better. Like if you just put dojo.
Okay.
And that was the last time Trent recorded with any of us.
Yeah.
Joe's just trying to pay him back for all the times Trent's tricked him into like what
Yeah.
you normally do.
Yeah, if you're feeling down, Trent, I've got some Tuesdays with Maury quotes here.
There you go.
If you need anything,
Trent, I have to tell you, Trent, that was one of the funniest episodes I've heard in a while. Was you just randomly coming out with your Tuesdays with Maury quotes? That was the best. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, do your review of not Taekwondo Fart.
All I can do is talk about my intent this weekend. Is like this is my first quiet, reasonably lazy weekend in a long time, and I think I'm going to play Hunt for the Ring with my family. So I'm looking forward to it quite a bit. Hunt for the Ring is like a hidden movement. I think like Scotland Yard, but it's set in the Lord of the Rings universe, and it's published by Ares Games, who also did War of the Ring, and the components are gorgeous. And I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm going to get a play in of it with my family, where they are all Nazgul trying to kill poor Frodo and Gandalf.
Which will be played by Trent.
I'm gonna be Frodo / Gandalf, and they're gonna be the Nazgul. So
very cool. I saw that being played.
Team up with your wife, because you'd be trying to trip each other so the Nazgul could catch you the entire time.
Well, yeah, my wife will be like Witch King of Angmar. She'll be like organizing them and
sending them against you.
Yes, that's the way.
I feel like that's an appropriate breakdown for Trent's family.
Family time. Yeah,
I'll point out. I'm going to say, honey, when I get off this podcast, I'm going to say, honey, we talked about you tonight. Oh, yeah, what did you say? I said, I compared you to the Witch King of Angmar.
Well, to be fair, in my experience, every board game in a family setting becomes beat up on dad, so you might as well just embrace the role.
Yeah.
Always, yeah. Embrace the darkness. That's right. Oh, yeah. Just enjoy all of the Freudian kind of rage that they direct at you. It's a good time. Trent, I saw that being played. Guess where? At PAXU. And it looked really cool. Yeah. Joel was playing it with, I think, some of the guys from Rolling Dice and Taking Names. It looked at the components, like you said, were gorgeous. Joel said he really liked it. I didn't have a chance to play it myself, but this is also a game that I think it has like the two-sided boards, right? So like the first half of the game, you're trying to like sort of escape like, from Bree or whatever, and then the second half, you're trying to get to Rivendell, right?
Nope. Basically.
No, I got that wrong. Okay.
You're more or less correct. It's double-sided. And the first one is more about Frodo trying to sneak away with the ring, and the second half is more about Gandalf keeping them distracted while Frodo finishes up his business. That's really honestly what the two halves are about. In the first half, you're basically Frodo, and the second half, you're basically Gandalf.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
The weird thing is, this is something I noticed while I was reading the rulebook. The last 4 pages are about how to integrate it with War of the Ring for a giant 6-7 hour metagame. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding a bit. Yeah, I'm not kidding a bit. That's how the rulebook ends. Is like 4 pages of like how they combine into one game. And it sounds insane, but yeah.
I thought I heard of some convention that was doing something like that with Phil Eklund games. It was going to be like the Phil Eklund tournament, where you like whoever survives Bios Genesis goes on to play Bios Megafauna, then Bios Origin. And then finally, the winner of the tournament, whoever can win all of those, and High Frontier.
There you go.
Yeah. That would be an interesting sight to see. That's for sure. Yeah, I would be curious to try that one, Trent. The Hunt for the Ring. Not so much the Phil Eklund tournament. My brain would melt, Andy. But I have to be prepared for some of Phil's games. But I did manage. I will brag a little bit. I did manage to score a copy of High Frontier 3rd edition. So I'm super excited about somebody teaching that to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
when you open it up, like there's like 4 rule books, and like each one is like 50 pages long, and it's like one says read this first, and I'm like, oh god.
I'm pretty sure that the Phil Eklund tournament is actually just a bunch of people that are playing Phil Eklund games, and the actual tournament is just whoever gets the most nerded out in the science when they discuss what happened in the game wins.
That's right. That's right. Do you remember when my vector was off?
When I just went boom. Remember when Joe went boom and then boom, and it was
That's right. That's right.
everywhere.
Remember when I didn't calculate the mass of the fuel correctly?
It was one of my favorite pictures coming out of BGG Con, though, when someone's like, so who thought that they could take a risk of a 1 on a 1d6 instead of paying 4 water tanks? This guy. And it just shows like a rocket laying on its side with a 1 on the
dice. That's classic. That is actually pretty funny. All right. Joe, what are you hyping, my friend?
Oh, for me, I did want to say that we have some geniuses over here in our chat, and together we decided that Taekwondo Fart is a dexterity game about making with the core mechanic is the box fart. That is what the game is all about. Setting the game the lid on top of the box and closing it as musically as possible. So thank you guys for that. It was kind of some of my inappropriate like bursts of laughter were based on that. So, yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and get really serious really quick because I'm going to be hyping a game called Hunt a Killer. And if you want to check this out, go to huntakiller.com. It is kind of a subscription sort of game in which you're going to be mailed, this has never happened for me yet. So I'm just kind of being I'm very interested in this process. The idea is that it's kind of like an escape room of sorts, but you are acting in the capacity of a detective who's been sent these materials by a serial killer that's playing with you and trying to get you to sort of solve the case. And so, like I said, it's a subscription thing. You're going to be paying you can pay like up front for a year, you can pay for 6 months, or you can just pay for 1 month, which is all I've done for this time because I've never played anything, but they rush mail it off to you as soon as you buy it. And then it's something I'm looking forward to playing. So I don't know really much about what it's going to be, but I will just say this, that it's going to take a lot to impress me when it regards the exit escape style games, where you're some sort of an escape room or just, puzzle solving one-time use games, because I've just been crazy about them. And I've been trying to consume, I don't know, I just kind of automatically consume them. They're ones that I can easily get the folks in my life to play with me, because it's not this sort of lifetime commitment of playing this game over and over and over. So I can kind of make the case for it being a cool event, and I'm looking forward to trying out Hunt a Killer, which is seemingly gaining quite a bit of traction on the internet.
It sounds like a totally unique concept, so that sounds cool. I like that. It's kind of reminded me of like a True Detective kind of thing. Trying to track down the crazy serial killer. Yeah, I'm actually watching the first season of that show. Mm-hmm. I've been hearing people talk about how amazing it is, and I'm finally starting to watch it. And I'm like, this is pretty wild. So yeah, it sounds like it's tapping into that same kind of thing going on there. So that's cool. All right.
I hope it's better than they have like, where was it? It was England, but they had like an assassin game where you're given like, basically like they pair up people and you're given a target of who you have to track down and basically squirt with a water pistol. And, but the people who played it were like, it sounds so cool, until you realize you're like sitting in a bush for 8 hours waiting for your target to get off work.
Yeah.
To where like one person finally like just snapped and his assassin rang the doorbell or something. And the guy's like, I'm going to this yard and end it for me, please. It was just so dumb.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Oh man, sounds like my first time. It sounds like my first time playing paintball. I'll never,
this is just a great image
never forget that experience. Oh, totally. I tried to do a barrel roll. That didn't end well.
Jeff, we all were supposed to come in. You won hide and seek, Jeff.
Yeah. What I love is the fact that is that we had the rental equipment. And so, like, anytime you would exert yourself in any way, shape, or form, your goggles would completely fog up. You couldn't see anything. You're not allowed to take them off. And I remember one time, like, trying to sprint, which is, you know, it's a concept for me. It's not so much of something I can actually do. And so I tried to, like, sprint. And after, like, the first 3 feet, I couldn't see anything. Tripped on a root to, like, a tree. It just, like, fell right on my face. It was terrible. It was a lot of fun, though.
One time when I went, there was this middle school age kid just talking trash about how he was going to destroy everybody on the team I was in. And I managed to sneak into a fort and saw him and his dad sneaking by. And I just lined him up in my sights and imagined every time a student has ever annoyed me. And I hit that kid like 20 times.
Ping, 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 ping.
It's quite the admission for you to make there on a live broadcast.
Yeah,
it was a good time. Well, the best part was his dad was like, that was out of line, so I shot him.
Oh. Oh my goodness, man.
They paid me back in kind, but it was a good first round.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Bitter lifelong rivalry there. What's your turn now, Geof? What are you going to talk about?
Who, me?
You're hyping something,
enough,
right?
haven't I?
Jump on.
Here's my hype. It's really short and sweet. Okay. Supposedly, GMT shipped me or is shipping me, or you never know. It just kind of shows up when it's from GMT. It never says, like, I can look at orders that were fulfilled 5 years ago and it says not shipped. You know, it's just, they don't really update those things. But what was I saying?
Welcome to.
I got Centerville.
Yep.
I backed Centerville a long time. It's like called Welcome to Centerville, and I got it because it's Chad Jensen. Now, you know, Chad did Dominant Species, which is, you know, and he did Combat Commander.
Combat Commander.
You know, that whole series, and I absolutely love his games. And he also designed Urban Sprawl, which I am apparently one of the few people who actually likes that game.
I like it.
Me and Lance Meister and a few other people.
You got Trent. Trent does too.
You do? Cool. All right. I got a few people who like it. So, you know, it's just it's a really cool game, but it's kind of very meaty and you know, a little on the long side, and it has some wild swings of fortune due to some, you know, card events and things that can happen, but I really enjoy it. Well, Welcome to Centerville is supposed to be kind of a reimagine, kind of very streamlined. I know everybody loves that word on this podcast.
Andy does more than anyone.
Sort of version. I know Andy loves it. It's a you know, kind of a sort of reimagining of that idea of city building. And so when I saw he was taking another run at it, it was going to be using, you know, some interesting mechanics. I believe it's, you know, got dice involved in it again. And it really kind of looked interesting. And I thought, what the heck, you know, I'll definitely sign up for it. And so I P500'd it, and it's coming. I don't really know much about it. I'm not one of those guys that reads rule books in advance. When I learn a game, I have to set it up in front of me. I cannot grok games. Maybe because I've got, you know, 700 rule sets bouncing around in my head, but I cannot just grok a game by reading the rules. So a lot of times when I take a chance on something like that, like a P500 or a pre-order or something like that, it's based on the designer. You know, it's based on somebody that I know, I respect. I'm like, okay, cool. Chad's coming out with something. I'm going to take a run at it. So I'm looking forward to trying it. I don't really know much more about it, so it's a nice, short, and sweet hype section from me.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Geof. Thanks for making that at least kind of short. You know, I wouldn't say painlessly short, but I appreciate you thinking of us.
It was kind of crampy short. You know?
Well, it's great to have you on here, Geof. I'm glad that you got a chance to go out there to PAX, and I appreciate Joe P. from your guys' group over there that offered to haul my sorry tale out there. And unfortunately, you know, it's hopefully going to happen one day where I'll be able to come out there and game in your neck of the woods there and attend a convention or something. But unfortunately, it wasn't in the cards this time. So it sounds like it was a great time and lots of fun had by all. And it sounds to me like maybe did a lot for growing the hobby, especially with all the folks being wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yeah, I think so. That was probably one of the most exciting things about it for me. So thanks again, guys, for having me on and listening to me ramble about PAX there. And I hope it gave people a good picture of what that has to offer so that next year when it's running after BGG Con, people might think about maybe taking a run at it. Seeing what it has to offer. I can only imagine it's going to be, bigger and more successful. So, really looking forward to see what the future has to hold.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to the future. And we are now done with this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. I'm your host, Joe Sallin. Say good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Of course. We'll catch you next
night.
week. We will catch you next week
Thanks.
here on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.